Hello, everyone, and welcome to Final Fantasy Count Up Cast. It is finally here, it is finally passed, and we are ready to talk about it a week later. This episode will be spoilerific. We will be talking about Final Fantasy 15, our thoughts on the game, things we liked, things we don't like, gripes we have, and Morag is smiling because he's ready to rip it a new one. But can't do a show alone. I'm one of your hosts, Michael, Mr. Happy Poveromo, of course, joining for like they do every week. And as I stare at Morag's face, I grow more and more frightened by. Although Slack's face looks like he wants to murder me right now, which is weird because
I'm serious right now.
He looks like Shia LaBeouf, kind of like that.
That's Slack. That's a form of suicide. You can't kill me. Just
Whoa.
so. Yeah. So we have, of course, Slackaholicus, who just finished this game the other night, and Morag, who also just finished this game the other night. How are you gentlemen doing this fine Monday?
I'm good.
I've
been playing Final Fantasy 15, so I'm pretty great right now.
I decided not to, on my stream, I decided not to green screen myself. I have the green screen, but because I know on your guys' streams, it doesn't cover the whole thing, I'm just going to keep it uniform. I'm showing all of our green screens and not changing a damn thing.
It's all good, man.
It's all good. So, we all finished Final Fantasy 15 since it came out on Tuesday, and we have a lot to talk about. This is going to be, like, sometimes we think these shows might only go for an hour. This is not one of those shows where we think it's not going to go on.
This could easily go for 3 hours. I could see this being our longest one.
This could easily be the longest show. And it's kind of fair. We've culminated everything into this moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like it deserves a full episode, like a full, maybe even two-parter at this point. All right. So we're going to be breaking the game down little by little. But before we go into each individual topic, as much as I know Morag wants to start on one topic and continue through all the topics. I can see the look on your face of just I want to go from point to point to point to point to point.
I'm sitting here. I'm waiting patiently.
What were your overall impressions of the game? I'm going to start with Slack because I already know where Morag's is going to go. I'm starting with Slack. What was your overall impression of the game?
To start with, on day one and probably day two, I felt like overall, just to give it a score, I was around like a 9 or 9.5 out of 10. Towards the end of the game, there were some issues that came up with the gameplay and with some of the other stuff where it definitely started to move farther away from a nearly perfect product that felt like I had waited 10 years for. And it was still somewhere around like an 8.5 or 9. And overall, I was still really, really pleased with what I got. But my expectations got set so high after day one that the dropping it down after that, it hurt.
That's so really funny that all these years that expectation was like a C. And then
yeah,
like within
I was down here. To clarify for everybody, going into the game about like 7 months ago, I was like, this is recent Square stuff I haven't been as happy with. And then as time went on, as we got closer to the release and we saw more and more, my expectations went up and up and up and up and up. And I was actually expecting a really good game out of it. And day one, it blew my expectations away. It was even better than I expected it to be. And then things started to take a chapter.
And I think we all have that. Anyone who's played the game through at this point knows the point we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's a universally accepted sort of judgment on a specific point of the game that nobody should be criticized for. It's really strange, and we'll get to that specific point. Okay, so overall, you were happy with the product.
Yeah, very, very happy with the game. Probably my game of the year. I can't think of any major releases that came out that are contentions for that.
Okay. Morag.
Going into this game, the main thing that they were trying to end up pulling off is that it was a fantasy based on a reality. That was one of the main kind of catchphrases them going into the game itself. And you know what? They pulled that off. They pulled that off amazingly well. They do.
I totally agree. This is probably the best blend of a real world, like our
a real fantasy.
A real fantasy.
Mixed with like having these spells and all of this like dead kings that you can get the power of and stuff like that. Very, very, very well executed.
As well, when we launched the game, we go and see the catchphrase in the opening. First thing that we end up seeing, a game for fans and first timers. Like it again does an amazing job of that too. We have stuff that's for the fans. We have a ton of stuff for the first timers, and then we get into the main chunk of the game. You know, we're given the background universe of it. We have We had the unleashing of it back in March. We had the movie. We had the anime. We even had, the grandfather of Final Fantasy himself go and give his accreditation, say, you should play this game. I've talked with them. It's excellent. I love their ideas. Go play it. So they pulled all stops to make sure that, to let people know, hey, Square Enix is here, and we love you guys. And then on the other side, they're like, hey, people, have you heard about this Final Fantasy thing? It's not for geeks. Yes, and it's like, you can be a geek too if you want, but it's not for geeks.
I think the best thing that they did in that regard, Cup Noodle 15.
That was great earlier today. It says it's on the 5th. Is that today?
It might be today.
Yeah, that is today. Today is Cup Noodle 15.
So as they end up getting into the game, and we go and see the journey with your friends, your comrades, or another way to look at it, your confidants, your protection, your guard, but slowly you realize it's a lot more than that. They are really your brothers in arms to go and save the world. And, you're the king, and you have to, be with them. They'll be there for you. You have to trust them. It's the whole trust thing to the end of the game. That's what it is. To the very end of the game. Those characters, do they trust themselves? Do they trust each other? Even to the point where Prompt was like, I'm sorry, guys, I'm actually an enemy, but I love you guys. People were like, it's okay. We love you, buddy. We love you, but we're not going to ask any more questions. No, nothing whatsoever. So, but a mix of the story, the camaraderie, mixed with a portion of the gameplay, which was lackluster at best, you end up having what feels like a very muddled amount of information that they're trying to end up, targeting certain audiences. Are they trying to create this thing that is for everyone else? Are they trying to create something just to try and keep the trust of the fans? Like I said, in the long run, I don't think they actually figured out what they wanted in the game itself. And they could never end up doing it, especially with having two directors. A project that started off as Versus going into 15. They took some assets. They pretty much scrapped the whole thing. They took out the mythos of the Chrysalises, and they ended up building their own universe around it with 15 as well, too. So I think it was almost muddled to begin with. And they tried their best to salvage as much information as possible in order to make a product out the door.
All right.
So it's a muddled game. It's a muddled game.
So
I could agree with that in some regards. I don't think they did a great job of blending the idea of a strong railroaded storyline while also having the open world aspect. I didn't like the way that they went about executing that. I think the dog thing is really silly.
I wish there was more information about the dog. Purpose. Especially with getting the Omen trailer. The Omen trailer almost has... It's a little bit of imagery, but all in all, it meant absolutely almost nothing for the story.
But there's a scene where he sees it in his dreams.
Yeah, we don't even actually get to see the one that matters at the very end, where it's him looking like he's stabbing Luna Freya. That he's the one that ended up killing her. Ultimately, I guess he kind of did in the game in a way.
Omen is meant to be very, very... What's the word I'm looking for? Not ambiguous. It's left open to interpretation.
Like it's funny because I never realized it, but at the very beginning of the game, Gladios ends up saying this must be an omen. And then they replay that exact same line at the very end of the game. The last thing they end up saying is that whole pushing the car sequence once again. Because at the end of the game, I was like, what the hell was Omen supposed to be out? And then all of a sudden, he just ends up talking about it. I was like, was it just in his head the whole time then? That it was just showing his doubt in himself, that he wasn't trusting the people around him, and that he was trying to always grasp at things at the same time too. So, and again, I don't think it was very well explained exactly what Omen was, and trying to pull out key parts about each character and how they were supposed to interact with each other as well too.
I think the thing that was most disappointing me about Omen was he fought a bunch of Cerberuses, and there are no Cerberuses in the game.
Holy shit, you're right, there isn't.
There are none. I've fought every enemy in the game except for, I think, one at this point. And actually, no, I did fight the one. I just didn't kill him. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the World of Ruin. Because Slack also had to make a hasty exit. A lot of hasty exits, actually.
Friggin' what we're ruining.
Anyway, back to my opening remarks.
My opening remarks will be much simpler than that. It's the first Final Fantasy that 20 hours in, I didn't get tired of the gameplay. It felt fresh. It felt exciting the entire way through. I learned a lot of new things. I learned that the skill gap of being good in the game and being poor in the game was very real and very, very attainable if you spent enough time in it. When it came to the story, by the time all was said and done, I knew everything I needed to know. I felt like there was no fat on the story, which Final Fantasy might as well be calling it Final Fantasy, because their stories tend to have a lot of fat that you don't need. And I'll explain that more when we talk about the story independently, or, well, on its own, I guess I should say. And overall, most of my complaints are minor ones, and a lot of it's things I would have liked to have seen more, but I don't feel like I needed to know those things. It's like a perpetual interest in the world building, I'd say. Yeah. More.
And the information that they do give us, it feels deliberate, and it kind of helps, like, legitimize the lore of the world and the way that it's designed.
Minus one scene, the entire story is told from Noctis's perspective, and nothing. You don't know anything that Noctis doesn't know. Minus one scene in the game, which is when they show the Empire plotting to.
That actually caught me off guard.
That's on my checklist of what the hell.
Yeah,
it's a scene that had no relevance to anything. It had no relevance to develop the story. It had no relevance to show that Noctis was a threat. It basically showed us 5 characters that were going to die. I'm sorry, 4 characters that were going to die and 1 that's left unseen, pretty much. So that's where that is. So the first thing, since we're going to be going through, we're using our old show notes for anyone. We don't have to talk about party composition. We don't have to talk about what platform we played it on, because none of us played it on an Xbox. We don't need to talk about that. Although, am I the only one who played it on a Pro?
Maybe.
Or yeah, okay.
I did not play it on a Pro, no.
Okay. I didn't even play it on high mode. I literally played it on light because
someone
I didn't want to
in
take
my
any
chat
chances.
played it on HD mode, and they had a lot of crashing.
I heard that's why I didn't want to. I heard that HD mode, it wasn't the sole cause of any bugs. But playing on light mode, I had 0 crashes, almost no bugs, almost no game-breaking bugs, I should say.
Yeah.
And it was just minor annoyances. The X button has become the least favorite button of mine. Let's just put it that way.
X to interact. Jump. No!
I did have a small problem with the graphics occasionally, like,
artifacting.
breaking.
I had some artifacting during some techniques.
Yeah.
During techniques only, yeah.
That was really
present-
weird. Like,
that
I was
was
worried
present
about
in
it being
Judgment
my
Disc
disc.
as well.
I thought that it's like, oh god, is my PS4 dying?
Yeah, okay, I had the same problem, and now that I've heard, you're the only other person that it was like, oh yeah, I had the same issue. I was like,
no,
thank God.
everyone
Not just me.
in my stream said they'd had that issue and that they.
I asked my
recognized that
chat, and they were like, no, never seen it. At first, it was so consistent with Ignis's mark that I thought it was that one, and I was just, is it part of the technique?
Ignis's mark and Prompto's Piercer were the 2 that that I had artifacting the most on.
I had it on Mark and something else. I forget what the third.
I had it on Gladio's first.
I didn't have it on any of Gladio's. Only on Prompto's Piercer and Ignis's mark. His regroup didn't do it. His enhancement didn't do it. Star Shell, none of the other ones did it. Only the tier 1 tech skills. I don't know. It was really weird.
Weird.
So the first thing, since we're talking about techs, is the combat. Now, we had most of CountUpcast has been our discussion about the adjustment from turn-based to active turn-based to now complete action. Well, not active turn-based, active time battles. ATB. For the longest time, I thought that's what ATB stood for. Like when I was young, I thought it was active turn-based, which is dumb.
Active time battle, but
it is active time battle.
Okay,
it is. But like I still like from my childhood, I still occasionally call it active turn-based, even though it's not what it means. So I felt that they took something that I was afraid of most, which was Square Enix specifically developing action combat, and quelled all of my fears on that, because I had next to no issues with the combat, and after 20 to 25 hours, I was excited about every fight. And even at the end of it all, having done all the secret dungeons, there's only one instance where the combat just felt like it had no place in the game. And I'm not talking about Chapter 13. I'm talking about the Adamantoise.
I haven't done it yet.
I haven't done it.
Neither of you will be happy with that fight.
I walked into it. I saw what it was. It said that I only had 8 or 9 of the characters out of the max. I was just like, oh, okay. I'll come back to this afterwards.
Yeah, I've got 12 of the 14. So now that I've already triggered that event where it shows 12 of 14, now that I know that that's what that's leading into, if I get the other 2 characters, do they get added retroactively?
I have no idea. I got 11 out of whatever, and I just, because all it is each character in the thing gives you an item when you talk to them. So the more of them you have, the more items you get.
Okay, that's what I thought, and so I was like, oh, all right, I got some free items, I guess.
Yeah, that's all it is.
And whatever.
Really nice items, though.
So do you mind to do a little bit of history about the development and how we got to the gameplay where we are?
Well, 10 years ago, they
had a dream. They created the Fabula Nova Crystallis.
With Numera, he wanted to go and do something that was a heavy departure from Kingdom Hearts. He wanted to go and he loves his love of extremes, and he wanted to try and take this more to his own personal taste. This is what Versus was. Versus was this. And if you go and look up a lot of the videos of Versus gameplay, it's still very close to what we end up having now, which is really interesting. But sadly, over the time, they end up having to go and swap it over to another person, because after 4 years, the game was only 25% through development, and it was having issues at that point. It was still having issues. To go and also say too is the reason why they want to put it as an off series is because the concept behind it was unfitting for a regular numbered Final Fantasy installment. And then he's like, why don't we do it as a spinoff then? So anyway, when Tabata ended up coming in, who ended up doing Crisis Core, Type 0, which then helped a little bit on Versus as well too, and is now took over for 15 when they end up switching over to the new engine as well too, and we'll be doing FF7 Remake. You can go and see kind of the progress of this battle system and how it's been evolving to where it is now.
For a decade, yeah.
So if you have played Type O or Crisis Core, or even if you've played Third Birthday as well too, is another game that I ended up doing, but it's much different outside the realm, is that it's very reaction based. It's reaction based, and like, number one, you cannot spam. If you spam, you're gonna die, which is good. It's not your regular action game. Say something like Metal Gear Vengeance, or say the female demon hunter Bayonetta. So it's nothing like that. So it's trying to find that balance then. So how do you end up playing a game like this that's not your regular action game, but yet it's still you push a button to make sure you do something, and it's fun and creative at the same time too. So when you go and take a look at this, when you're trying to make a game that's very photogenic, very smooth, what can you cut to make it as simple as possible too? And that's what I feel they ended up having to do in this game. They had to cut a lot of features to try and make something work for multiple people to go and play. Because again, first-timers and old fans as well, too.
Well, that's what I was discussing on my initial thoughts, how I felt that as soon as I began playing, I felt a very real skill gap. There was what I could clearly do and kind of get by with, and what I was actually capable of. It's almost like when you play a fighting game on campaign mode, and you can get away with spamming one attack if you can figure out the pattern, or you could kick their ass and like actually be good at the game.
I feel like it has a fairly close relation with the skill gap in kind of the way that everything in the combat is designed, in comparison to something like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, where it's not necessarily as intense or as flashy as those games, but you still have the, like, if you really want, you can play through the game and you can get good enough to where you're not needing to use items at all. You can warp around, you can block and dodge every attack, you can parry every attack that's parryable, and you can swap your weapons out and bring out whatever weakness that they have, deal with a bunch of AoE attacks with certain weapon types and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's very Bayonetta and Devil May Cry in that you can get good enough to where you don't need to ever use a potion. So
one of the really cool things, though, about those games is that you have a combat that's ever evolving over the course of the game. From the very beginning, you end up having some of your basic attacks. You can start exploring into and figuring out how to end up building your repertoire. You're given a few new abilities as well, too, through your journey. Even if you take a look at, say, something like Wonderful 101, does an amazing job of this through their upgrade system that fundamentally fully changes how you end up playing in your action game as well, too. Sadly, in FF15, they don't do a very good job of this. Especially as yourself playing as through Noctis, you end up getting your swords, which don't have any real bearing on how a fight ends up playing out. You end up having your attacking in a certain direction, if you understood that, if that's what they wanted you to do during the intro, and you have your dodging as well too. You have flashing out. You have positional combat as well too, to try and get extra damage buffs. But anything past that, from the start of the game to the end of the game, there's really nothing. Oh, sorry. Charged up Amagur, where you press both buttons to go into super crazy mode. Like
Which
really
wasn't even as strong as I expected it to be either.
I learned that the only way that does end up scaling is if you end up getting all 13 of your swords, which you can't really get full access to before beating the game. You can, but it's a ton of grinding as well too. To get all of them.
It's not a lot of grinding actually.
Okay.
It depends if you know how to abuse EXP bugs. Well, EXP systems as well too in the game. I don't.
Luckily, I played Judgment Disc, so I knew exactly how to power level in this game because Judgment Disc teaches you how to use Expericast.
But again,
I feel like it doesn't evolve enough over things that you have control over. Like, you get new techniques for your friends, but a lot of the time, like, all you're still just going like, oh, L1. I want this guy to do this attack this time. My technique usage for most of the game has been Ignis's regroup. Just using that to get free heals in the middle of a fight if you've been screwing up. It's fantastic. Gladio's damage is usually insane, and then you don't get that much else that I feel like makes much of a difference.
So let me do a few. Gravisphere is good for the
Gravisphere,
magic build.
Yeah, I need to get that
because
one.
It groups them all up. For a magic attack, puts them all in one place. Gladio's Tempest is good for the same thing, but it puts them at risk too. You also have the enhancement skill from Ignis, which automatically locks onto an enemy weakness and adds it to your weapon as an elemental buff. Regroup is, of course, good for immediately after hitting a bunch of enemies with a spell, is usually the best use I've found for it. Because you'll probably beat the shit out of your own team in the process. And you're like, yeah.
Which is another one of the things that I don't like. The lack of control you have over your allies. They're just going to be in the middle beating the crap out of enemies. And you want to use a spell. And then you throw a spell out there. And Gladio's like, why didn't you warn us? And it's like, because I can't. The game doesn't let me.
You can. You press L1 and regroup.
Well, yeah, use regroup and pull them out. That's your only option. And I
think this ends up bringing up one of their fundamental problems with the game, is that there's no really engaging fights that force you to learn mechanics in the game. Like, to ultimately make you have to learn it no matter what, a steel wall of types, or even through the tutorial saying you are still messing up, learn it better. Like, it allows you to kind of stumble through no matter what. Like, literally playing the game, I get hit, just throw a potion up. Get hit, throw a potion up. Like that. That's how I end up playing most of the game, which is kind of sucked. So trying to find ways to end up doing that. Now, granted, I could have put more points in techniques, but that would involve more grinding, more farming out, because I end up putting my points into other portions of the game as well, thinking that was going to end up helping more. But ultimately found out that, hey, techniques, I can just abuse them for iframes and massive damage. Which
techniques
really is that gameplay? Being able to abuse an action mechanic with your teammates just to get free iframes?
It is when it's within the limitations of the tech bar.
Yeah, but when that thing ends up going and filling up so quickly that you can almost spam attacks.
When you're doing post-game stuff, it doesn't ever feel like it's fast enough.
But that's the thing, though. Does it mean that you end up having control of the fight if you have to spam iframes? When you're always like, I need more iframes, I need iframes just to get that damage. Does it really make it feel like that fight you have control of? That you are trying to hope to God, I just want more iframes to live?
Yeah, that's the choice. That's the choice that you make. I mean, the whole game is built around developing iframes. It's not even just the tech attacks. It's
I know, but go.
Blindside strikes, link strikes.
Blindside strikes are supposed to be your method of utilizing slower weapons in a safer manner, which is why the friendship band in the game, which increases the range of link and blindside strikes, is so important because it takes things that were otherwise I almost felt too slow to use, like the greatsword on like bigger enemies. And it gives me a means of just switching to, all right, blindside is off cooldown, go. And you could just tell because blindside has a flat cooldown of like 15 seconds for each party member. And it meant that if the enemy was in the middle of an attack, I could strategically get behind them, go for a blindside. Or if they're in the middle of attack, I get behind them for a blindside and then use that to avoid the attack.
Yeah. Like I would have appreciated what they ended up doing with techniques, but being able to go and have more variety on them, having a lot more access to using them to actually feel like you're actually shifting the entire combat, I feel like would have been a much better approach too, especially when they go and make the whole base of the game a fantasy based on reality. Granted, you can go and say, well, Dark Souls is all about abusing iframes. Yeah, with a single dodge. But, you know, you go and use some of your big attacks, you're still open. You're still open yourself for vulnerability to get hurt during your big moments as well at that time. And plus that game ends up offering a lot more in ways of a skill gap, a true skill gap versus spamming techniques to try and live as much as possible.
Well, that's the thing. That's part of the skill gap. How much do you rely on the techniques? Because sitting there and using a technique, if you're properly skilled, should be a loss of damage over time. Because you're basically negating Noctis's attacks for X amount of time to pull off anywhere from like 2 to 3 strikes. Usually only one of the strikes is super powerful, and then Noctis's follow-up is usually less powerful than the actual attack itself. So there's a trade-off there. The thing is that you can't ignore damage plus not getting hit. No matter how good you get, you can't ignore that I will not be hurt during this time. You know what's weird? They actually fixed that in Judgment Disc. I used to die during my I'd been KO'd during my fucking my link ups, or not my link ups, during my techs. I'd had the Bandersnatch kill me, and I'm just like.
Well, I noticed that some techniques I would get iframes for everyone, where some techniques will only give me and the person doing the technique iframes, and my 2 other teammates were dying then. So it was really weird, and trying to find a way to actually use them in a fight for like big mega attacks that are gonna go and encompass the whole room. But again, it just feels weird. Why do I need to abuse something that is not reality in order to go and try and, you know, avoid a major attack in that fashion? Why, like, if this is an action game, why don't you give me the ability to dodge said attack, especially for my entire team?
I will say that I wish the AI was more readily able to dodge things, almost able to read an attack like after they'd seen it. I could understand if your allies have never seen an attack, but for every time I had an ally die to a snake's AoE poison attack, I'm just like, regroup is a great skill. I'm going to use that every time I fight a snake now, because snakes have an attack where they coil up. It takes like 6-7 seconds for them to do it, and then they just do an AoE around them, and you're just like, guys, he's done that like 20 times now. Could you come
could
here.
You learn? Could you figure this out a little bit?
Be over here instead? No? Okay. Agnes, regroup.
I feel like probably the biggest complaint I have, aside from your ally AI not being very good, is just, for one, the camera. In any area where there's foliage, if you're fighting around trees, there's like a 99% chance that the camera is going to be right behind a bush.
Behind a bush. Okay, I thought you were going to say the bush pushes it forward. Yeah, no. Specifically, the area I'm talking about is south of Lestulum. There's an incredible amount of foliage, and some of the foliage you can't run through either. It creates a wall in the middle of an open field, and you're just like,
yeah, that's happened to me a few times. So I'll open up my map and I'll look at it, and I'm like, yeah, there's clearly not going to be anything down there. So this is an actual, not invisible wall, but at least it's visible. Invisible walls were really bad throughout the game too, but that's a different thing. The camera work was really bad, and then There would like be other times where if you were locked onto a tall enemy's head
And then
and
the
you warped
camera's like
close to him,
this.
the camera would get under your ass and it'd be like, look up there, it's the sky and the enemy's head. And you're like, what are its legs doing? I'd like to know what's going on there.
You know what? Speaking of that, since I know it's the Iron Giant that causes that problems more than any other of the tall enemies, why can I not target his scrawny ass legs? Why does it have to be his hands or his body? I just want to swing at his legs. That's all I want to do.
I would just untarget against him.
That's what I had to do. I was
swinging,
like, I just want to target your legs.
Yep.
Can I just... Your legs. Please.
And then, God, what was the other thing? It's in a broader sense, it can be very hard to see what's happening in fights against smaller enemies sometimes. You'll have like 3 or 4 of your party members all up on a guy, and you're all beating the crap out of him. And then all of a sudden, he starts to turn, and it just looks like he's turning or something. But no, he's actually whipping his tail at you. And it's like, oh, how was I supposed to know that I could dodge that right then? I couldn't see anything. I don't know what's going on, and that can be very frustrating because like in an action game, I keep comparing it to Devil May Cry and Bayonetta for that fun dodging action game goodness. In those games, you can see an enemy preparing, you can see that it's winding up, you can see that it's about to whip around and smack you with its dick. In this game, though, combat so often becomes kind of a mess of junk happening around a target that you can't actually know what's coming at any second.
Like when you're going against one target, it's not too bad. But as soon as you start getting multiple targets in there, it's not the point of having to rely on wait mode. But even then, you feel like a lot of your dodges become almost useless. Again, having to rely on technique AI in order to get past the multitude of crap that's going to end up coming your way. So it's just like, okay, so do you end up relying on your enemies to kind of just take it out smart-like? Do you just run around and revive them when they need it, if possible? Like how do you end up balancing the act at that point of you trying to survive and keeping your teammates alive at the same time too?
I will say, and my chat does bring it up, AI has to cater to LCD or they end up doing all the work. And it's true, because when AI is good, you get the other side of the thing. Where
I don't want to see the AI like when the snake AoE. It's like they've seen it a lot of times, so if they just know what that attack looks like and they start dodging it, it's like
I think it would just be nice if they didn't always dodge it.
Yeah, like, and that's where I want it. I want them to be like...
Sometimes they're not smart enough to dodge
it.
He's
doing the thing. We got to move away.
Like, if they're caught in the middle of bad iframes, they're like, fuck it. And then that's it. Or prioritizing things like, Gladio, stay back and protect Noctis. Like, that being something that you set him to do as his, like, primary
just being able to give your allies settings, even, on, like, preferences for what you want them to be doing in battle. That would have been fantastic. I would have liked that kind of customization for myself.
I don't want the Gambit to 12. That doesn't work that well in an action game.
Yeah.
And you know what's actually going to be really funny is, like, with the lead-up of 12 Remastered coming out and being kind of the same look, and people are like, man, I wish I had more control of my characters. They're like, hey, now that you...
Well, Final Fantasy 12 is literally you are the entire party. Because it's not a very active gameplay style. It's more of a micromanagement a la Dragon Age, where you have the tactical mode, except that's like the whole game. And then you have the option to like pause and go into a menu to do an attack kind of deal. If you're one of those plebs who pauses the game when you go into menus in Final Fantasy 12, I'm one of those plebs. I don't like leaving. It just Final Fantasy 12 doesn't play well when you try to do it actively. Not with the ability queuing. That's the problem. So, but they're fixing that in the remaster. So maybe we'll try it. Maybe we'll try it. Someone's like, Ignis has an excuse to get hit by attacks. I was like, not till later.
Oh, come on.
Not till later.
Yeah, I agree that the combat, when I first played the game, day one, I was like, all right, this combat feels a lot better than I expected. I was worried because I'm not a big fan of Kingdom Hearts. I'm especially not a fan of its gameplay. I don't like the way that they do the action gameplay in Kingdom Hearts. And so going into this, I was expecting a lot of the same from Square. And they've changed up quite a lot. I really like what they did with the combat overall. And I'm actually very hopeful for Final Fantasy VII because of it. From what we've seen, Final Fantasy VII should have... the Final Fantasy 15's combat system will be the basis of the Final Fantasy VII game.
Like Crisis Core, but...
It's funny. Going back, I ended up going through, comparing all the videos on stream yesterday when I was going through trying to find a little bit more of the history of development for the game. And so Versus originally had on like the bottom corner of the UI, you know, attack, items, summons, and whatnot.
Yep.
They end up taking that out for 15, but it's back in 7. So we might end up starting to see a little
We
bit
don't
more.
know that. We only saw a picture that has it on the menu, and that's it.
No, there's gameplay.
There's video.
When did
The trailer they have. The trailer they have, it goes and shows Cloud walking down a corridor, ducking into almost the exact same animations as well, and it shows a little bit later into that as well too. It goes and shows how him running around with the Buster Sword.
I misheard what you were talking about. I thought you were talking about something else. I misheard. Although they are built on 2 completely different engines, because Luminous Engine, by the way, is a piece of shit. I'm just like, ever since they started developing for it, they've had to talk about how many limitations there are on Luminous Engine, and that is very apparent at times.
And it's funny that like this is like their 2.0, whereas when they did the Dusk episode, that was at 1.5. So we ended up seeing like an upgraded version of the engine.
The engine just always, ever since Disguise, the jumping we knew was a limitation. The jumping never got any less awkward from Disguise, where it's almost like he stops about 3/4 through the jump and then just falls straight down, kind of thing. Which, by the way, when you go to do a marvelous dungeon called Pitios Dungeon, will be your favorite part of the control scheme.
Oh boy.
Oh boy is right. That is a hell of a... Have fun with that. By the way, have fun with.
Oh, I will.
I highly recommend that be the first thing you do as soon as you beat the game. Is go to Pitios Dungeon. I highly recommend, for the sake of your stream laughing at you for hours, that you go do that. If you want to be entertaining, you will go do the Pitios Ruins.
Mm-hmm. So another thing too, I felt the magic system was really cool, but I just wish there was a better way they could have organized it and made it feel like you weren't wasting items half the time trying to learn through the experimentation. A little bit more understanding of what potency versus level did for the actual damage as well too, when you were going to be crafting that spell. Because it felt weird trying to go and craft some spells and then trying to like balance, okay, so if I put this item in, it gets this level, and then I get this potency, and I can try and get this potency to get the next level spell, but it's only going to be this level. Like trying to find a way to balance that information so then you feel like you're not going to just be wasting away.
I didn't have too much trouble with that. I understood pretty early on that the calculation of the damage was based on potency versus level of the spell versus level of the enemy, which is how it ultimately ends up working.
Yeah, I would love to see an actual damage formula for it, because like I was experimenting with it and it felt random at some times, trying to like, you know, okay, I made this level 99 spell with like potency of only 50, and then I start flipping it around, making a tier 2 spell that was a potency of 150, like level 10, and it didn't feel like a lot was being done. And it's just like, this is weird. Okay. So getting more information on that would have been really handy. I don't know. Summons, having like, it just felt more they're just there to just look pretty, and they weren't there for any real.
They made my game a lot easier at times.
Well, no, it was a crutch that you couldn't lean on until it just randomly showed up. If you ended up,
what is the trigger for that? You know?
All right, let's go through
conditions
this.
for it. There is a few different conditions.
I don't remember Leviathans off the top of my head. Ramu each enemy in the game has what's known as a summon timer, and it will trigger. And basically, it takes all the enemies you're in combat with, adds their trigger timers together, and creates a timer for how long it takes for Ramu to become available. That timer is doubled. The speed is doubled when you're in danger for any point of the combat system.
Okay.
Ramu can also be used underground, whereas Titan requires at least 2 of your party members to be KO'd, and you need to be outside. He cannot do a summon. And apparently, I need to go test this myself, he has a unique animation for the Adamantoise fight, if you get him in that fight.
Nice.
I don't know that that's true. I need to find out, because I got Shiva on my Adamantoise fight. Leviathan, I've heard rumors, but it says it in the official guide, just nobody's given me the exact thing. Any body of water is apparently the condition for Leviathan. If you're near a body of water, then it does the countdown timer like it does for Ramu, similar to that. But it can even just be a tiny puddle. Even if you just have like a puddle near you, he won't come out of the puddle, but it meets the condition, even if you're inside of a dungeon.
I had him like come out like on the other side of like, it felt like almost like the other side of the map, like over a mountain, and then he came out of that puddle and then hit me because there's no water around me. I was like, what's going on? How did he summon? Like, there's no water around me. It wasn't raining. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
It was.
See, my chat says when he's in danger. I wasn't in danger when I got my Leviathan summon. You know what I mean? So the being near body of water is definitely true. But it could be, and it could even just be a tiny puddle. He won't see him come out of the puddle, but it meets the condition. And Shiva, which is the only other summon that is triggerable in more than one situation, randomly replaces the other 3.
Huh.
Under any of their conditions. It's not all of their conditions. It's when any one of them is met, there's a chance Shiva will replace them. And Bahamut can only be summoned in one encounter, and Ifrit's never summonable.
That's weird about Ifrit.
Well, to be fair,
you don't actually get his mark. You get his crystal or shard that says that you defeated him. So you don't actually get his blessing. You destroy him.
Yeah, he's the Infernian was not happy.
That's all interesting in the story.
That was also a really awesome fight.
Yes,
I wish that there was more gear. I just wish there was more gear, more variety of gear, especially when they end up highlighting in a couple of videos. So like, we have all this gear that you can go and play with. I'm just like, you know what?
You mean the displayable, like the hats and
the clothes?
Yeah. I secretly was like, that's bullshit, and I was like, I can't wait to make him look like a pimp. Like, you know, it's that extra little flair in the game, and I wish that there was more of that. And even just having gear that offered more stats as well too, that went with it. Like, you know, you have your main gear, and then you had your offset casual gear as well too, but it didn't really fully change your stats, except for your main gear, which was more attack or more defense, and that was really it.
Taking your jacket off also increases your magic, and reduces max HP, I think.
Yeah, that was the more attack versus the.
Well, it doesn't reduce your HP. It's just that your main clothes give you HP, I think.
Yeah, so it's like I wish that there was just more variety in gear in that way, allowing the player to feel like they have a little bit more control stat-wise going into different scenarios, different fights throughout the game. So then they could end up offering, again, other ways, fights to interact with you instead of just like, okay, well, I only have to rely on my trinkets. And, you know, that's fine, but I just wish they offered more variety.
Let me tell you, man, if I didn't think that those trinkets did a whole lot until I went into a fight with like insane damage, and I put on resistances, and I was just like, oh, what? I don't want to unequip the other thing, but it's so much easier. But I want I like that one. It's my favorite thing. I don't want to take off my favorite thing.
And you know, that kind of goes into my next thing too, like accessories. You can only have one accessory at the beginning, and then you have to spend AP points to end up getting more accessories.
Getting to 2 is fine. Getting to 3.
Yeah.
That's a huge hike.
And it's interesting, like seeing the whole ascension grid being the 8, 9, or 10 different categories that you end up having, trying to figure out, okay, so how will this end up affecting my combat if I want to be able to try and play this way, or if I want to play that way. And then later you find out, oh shit, I screwed up. And there's no easy way. It's like you have to go out and fight and try and figure out what triggers to get more AP, especially if you didn't end up putting your points into getting more AP easily.
And the thing with a lot of those too is those suck.
Win
a chocobo race, get 1 AP. Woo.
So here's what I did. I'm on my second playthrough right now doing the magic build,
and
I planned out my ascension grid ahead of time. Holy shit! There is so much free AP in this game that I didn't realize was there until I knew what the grids already were. Let's see. What have I just finished chapter 3. I'm only level 15. Because I'm trying not to do as much side stuff, and I am at like, I think I've gotten like 700 or 800 total AP because I found out that every on-tour is 20 AP, so I know the locations of the on-tours now. Every campsite is 3. I got that as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Plus, if you eat the favorite food, that makes it 4. So as soon as you get cup noodles, you could just buy those for Gladio, and it's an extra AP every time you camp because that's his favorite food. Then there's also.
But you got to think how you've got to invest at least 20 AP for the in the long run.
Yeah.
But I mean, early on, it's
in the early on. You're like, I want to be stronger.
Well, no, I actually went for all of the AP stuff early on, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty huge letdown for a lot of these. Chocobo race one is terrible. The camping and then the increased camping one are pretty good. Long chocobo rides is okay.
Big fishing
Long
is
car rides is pretty
amazing.
good.
If you end up fishing for any prolonged period of time, the big fishing is anywhere from 3 to 6 per fish.
I haven't gotten any big fish yet.
That sounds
for
like
the
that's
ones that
probably
I've
like
caught.
that's probably sounds like one of the best way to go and farm it up. I know that there's a whole bunch of different ways. It's like go into here, just spam your enemy whistle, and just keep killing stuff with your warp strike, one strike.
I did that
also
one
everything.
For the fishing one, you have to spend a bunch of points to even get up to where you can buy the large fishing one, though, too. It's a lot of, like, return. How quickly will it pay itself off and then allow you to start getting points for it?
The
And
crazy
some of
thing
those
is how
take
quickly
too
it
long.
does pay off. I learned that very quickly because I did the warp strike method to test how quick it was. I got approximately 600 AP per hour doing the warp strike method. Let me tell you, never have has the word Netflix and chill ever been more true than grinding AP with that method, because it's literally R1 triangle 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 R2 beast whistle, R1 triangle 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 R2 beast whistle.
So, do you guys feel that the Ascension Grid did a good job of explaining and showing how you could end up playing the game? Like, as soon as you get in and start spending points, or do you feel that they could have found another way to kind of help explain that and show different ways it would affect the combat?
I just would have liked for when you're purchasing a skill, a little video that shows it in action.
The main one that I had the problem with was the combat tree and some of the abilities you would buy there. I didn't know that they were passives.
Are you talking about like health per level and?
No, that's the stats screen. There's the combat one where you learn the stuff like first shot or whatever for Prompto, and it's just an ability that triggers randomly. You'll go into the fight and he'll be like, boom, first shot.
Gladio's one where he'll kick someone when you're blocking was easily one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He'll literally kick an enemy and flinch it while you're blocking. So, and then you can open up on them. Works really good on small enemies. And
then for the techniques tree, it's really difficult to know what those abilities are going to do. You don't know what kind of an effect they're going to have. That's just true of a game like that where there's an ability over here, and you don't know what that one's going to do. So the risk reward of buying it was too high for me a lot of the time. I focused on almost everything else before I started taking a look at some of the new techniques to grab, which is why I was like, oh, Gravisphere, apparently that's pretty good. I guess I'll pick that up eventually.
Yeah, also Gladio's Dawnhammer, which is probably one of the most powerful skills, and it's only 8 AP. It's
I've been using the crap out of that one. He was damage capped in like chapter 4.
That Dawnhammer was the reason why I picked up Gladio's break the damage limit. Although
I've been thinking about getting that one.
Although eventually I started using the one that costs 3. I believe it's called Impulse. I have a specific strategy for that one, though. I have a weapon called the Delta Daggers, which shreds Vitality. And if I shred the Vitality and then use that, it does about 150,000 approximately.
Jesus.
Yeah. Because it's literally they take twice the amount of damage. Whatever their Vitality was, it cuts it in half. So if they have 900, it makes it 450. There's only one enemy in the game it doesn't work on like that, and that enemy can go suck a fucking dick. Just talking about you, Max Angelus Zero. If you ever run into a robot called Max Angelus Zero, just don't. Just leave. Just leave. Trust me on this. I've tested it.
Some of the other stuff for the Ascension Grid. Also, we need to talk about the different weapon types for combat. Some of those are really good. But for the Ascension Grid, I'm trying to think of any other major problems I had with it, and I think they were all pretty okay.
I like the weight mode one a lot. I looked at
I haven't invested in that one at all. But
the weight mode tree, my favorite one, and I'm considering it for my magic run, is if you scan an enemy, they take double
Extra damage.
Yeah, from elementalism it's called. There's also the one that makes to your weight gauge and never goes down.
Yeah, and I was like, then why even have the weight mode? Yeah.
Turn-based.
Because that ability, it doesn't even cost that much. I think it's 99 AP.
It's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
The one before it, even the one before it, every time you kill an enemy, it resets the weight gauge.
Resets the timer, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
The weight tree stuff seems really, really good. But at the beginning of the game, I didn't have the weight stuff on until I realized that you need it on if you want to scan enemies. The only way to Libra an enemy is in weight mode.
Or Ignis does
you hope that Ignis will end up doing it. You just hope
and then you just remember.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't want to remember that. What if I go off and I fight 500 different enemies, and then I come back to this guy and I'm like, wait, was he weak to daggers or spears?
Man, let me tell you about Elder Coils, man. Let me tell you about how useless Libraing an Elder Coil is. No, You're talking about regular coils. I'm talking about elder coils.
Oh, regulars are bad enough, so I don't even know.
Elder coils are immune to all forms of magic.
Oh, fun. That's going to be fun for your playthrough then.
Yeah, it really will be. I already know how to beat them without magic, but it doesn't make it any better. Luckily, they're in the optional dungeon. And there's also enemies that are immune to physical as well at some points. You have to... The Ring of the Lucii was great. Let's see, immune to physical, huh? Let's Spider-Man just shot web.
Talking about the goddamn ring.
How do I shot web?
Why couldn't they make that cooler?
The ring, all right, part of the problem with the ring
Chapter
is that
13.
it's chapter 13. Yeah. What a waste of time. And
Can we save that for the story part?
Yeah, we'll get there. But I mean,
moving on to it to 13. I was just talking about the ring itself.
Yeah, the ring itself was a letdown. And the fact that there's an entire chapter that's almost solely based around you using that ring, and the ring is just a letdown. The one where you open up a dimensional warp hole is a really cool effect, but ultimately it's just I'm sitting there charging my ring.
Take some damage, hope you don't die. Bing!
All right, everything's gone. Okay,
Yeah.
next
You know what
fight.
I found to be incredibly effective about the ring? A full magic build with Holy. You just dodge everything and hit for 9,999.
Holy was my favorite technique on there. Death was boring.
Yeah, Death was
boring.
Holy was pretty cool though.
Death was cool though, being able to see the character slowly shrink.
And it heals you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it works against all enemies though.
It does not. You know what enemy it doesn't work against?
The Iron
Elder
Giant.
Corals.
Oh yeah.
No, it works against Iron Giants, but the amount of time it takes to work is so fucking...
Okay, because I tried using it for probably 3 minutes on the Iron Giant that you see during that sequence. You walk into that big hangar-like area,
yeah,
and there's one patrolling, and I was like, all right, well, I got in a fight with him. I'm going to try to...
The problem is...
It did not work.
If an enemy is ever not under continuous stress, eventually they reset.
It starts to recover, yeah. But I didn't see him withering at all, even from full magic.
What would have been really cool is instead of making the ring inequipable, since story-wise, you see him equip it. And it's on, minus the whole story basis on that. Being able to have that upgrade your attacks in the game to be a little bit more useful, I think would have been much better for gameplay, instead of being it optional to just make sure you have the ring equipped as well, too. It's like, you're building up your arsenal to go and fight all these crazy guys. Why not have that as a permanent thing then, since you have the ring physically?
I mean, they could have even done an option with it where it's an accessory or a weapon, and if you have it equipped as a weapon, you can't have it equipped.
No, Kingly Raiment with ring. Kingly Raiment without ring.
It's either that or like just a way to turn on and off of them in combat, or just like with a single button press somehow, something just to turn it on and off. But
I don't know about the single button press thing, because it seems like every button's got a lot going on as it speaks. L1's got like 3 or 4 different commands at any given time. R2 is what is R2? R2 is your items. R1 is locking on. L2 is your sum. L2 is about the only one.
I didn't find out that there was a permanent way to lock on, which was clicking down the right button when you're holding down your lock-on button.
Which is
good, but... And it's still a little broken, too, but anyway.
Yeah. I don't feel like it works very well in this game, actually. There's a lot of times where I like to be able to drop lock and to just roll wherever I want to and stuff. I don't know. This is one of the actual only games where I don't like the lock-on, like the permanent lock-on, as opposed to Devil May Cry, Dark Souls. I like just tapping, being locked on.
You know how many times I've died in Dark Souls to locking onto one enemy just to have something else?
Roll off the side.
I found that the locking on itself was much better if you turned your camera responsive rate up all the way to the max. If you ended up having it too low, no. Locking on is the worst thing you can possibly do for yourself.
Maybe I'll mess around with the camera sensitivity.
Yeah, no, not the camera sensitivity, the responsiveness.
The responsiveness one, yeah.
Just turn it right up to 5. And
like, you know how enemies you can be locked on, they'll kind of jump off screen. If you don't have it turned up, then they'll jump.
Yeah, because
one behind you and you're just like,
because the problem that I had with the demos is if you're locked on and they jumped out, it unlocks. You're like, what's the point of locking on then? Yeah. I thought that was the point of it.
Well, on the subject of the ring then, and how much of a letdown that was, since it was built up before the game came out, look at this cool thing you can do with it.
You know what's weird, though? They told us you wouldn't be able to get EXP. You only don't get EXP during Chapter 13. You still get EXP for using the ring post-Chapter 13.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was strange, because I just...
What did you guys think about the king weapons, the armament?
I use them in very limited capacity. If I was going to use one, it was for a reason, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like the shield, if I was going to use the shield, I was going to block. If I was going to use the warp strike sword, it was because I wanted to break a fucking body part, or I wanted to just do more warp strike damage, or be a little bit more mobile. I didn't even realize it was sapping health until like 2 hours after I was using it. I was like, how do I keep dying? I swear I'm not getting hit. And then I went, oh.
Yeah, they said that in the cutscene, and I was like, wait, it drains my health.
Yeah.
I
Why
thought
would
he
I
said
ever
it drained
wanna
my
equip
MP.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Yeah. No,
That would have been way better as a trade-off.
Yeah, I wish that those weapons had a little bit more gameplay aspect.
Yeah, something. Just something more put into them rather than just,
Yeah.
it's a more powerful version of your other weapons, and it drains your health because of that. Like, that's...
So speaking of more powerful isn't always true with those things either.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, they'll have 160 or so attack, and then you have weapons at the end of the game that are 200, 300, 400.
Well, that was like the one thing too, story-wise. Like they go and say, "Hey, you should go try and find all 13 of these weapons. They're going to be what you need to go and and then afterwards, like, oh no, you need to go get the 6 Astrals, so then you can go and get their blessing, so you can go and get the Crystal's blessing afterwards." It's
when we
just
talk
like,
about the story, I'll have a few things to say about
but
that.
what about the weapons? Do they not Matt? Okay.
Well, I've the story. I've that's where I have like everything laid out.
Yes.
Since I fully understood and comprehended the story by the end of it, and I feel like a lot of people did not.
No, I get the story. I just
A lot of people didn't.
Do all of the king weapons have a special kind of property? Because you were talking about a warp sword. What's that one?
Most of the time, they have a unique triangle attack. That's like the big thing. For example, the shuriken's triangle attack is delayed. It throws the shurikens, and then you spin dive towards them. Then you have the hammer. You never leave the ground. You can't leave the ground with the weapon when you're swinging it. It's also the slowest weapon in the game by far, and I can't use it by any stretch of the imagination. The crossbow is a crossbow, which should have an obvious property in that it's a ranged weapon. And also when you dash under them and you pop them up a few times. Like, they each have their own unique attributes. But ultimately, the big thing the two things they're most important for are powering up the armiger, because every weapon powers up the armiger, and the armiger chain.
Huge stat boost.
And if you equip them, and even if you don't use them, they give huge individual stat boosts.
Yeah, that's mostly what I ended up doing. I had 1 weapon and then 3 king's weapons that I just have equipped. And then if I ever need to switch weapon out, I would just pause, go in, switch it out, and go back.
I actually did like the exact opposite. I never equipped them because I was like, yeah, the stat.
I noticed you're this fucking guy over here had 3 weapons equipped the whole game. I was like, you have a 4th slot. Just put something in it, Slash.
No, I would use that for spells a lot of the time.
No, you didn't. That was the thing.
Yes,
you just left it empty.
I would put my experience cast spells in there and throw them at the beginning of the round. And then once I ran out, I was like, well, I don't feel like using a spell right now, so I'm going to wait to equip one.
You just never put anything. I literally watched you for like 4 hours. I was like, he didn't use it once. Just put something in the fucking slots.
It was just used for spells, and if I wasn't casting spells, I had no reason to bother even equipping it.
Oh, one last thing on gameplay. Open world was awesome. Being able to go out and just get lost in it. Did it feel like it was...
I got so lost.
Did it feel like it was a good place? Like that it felt fully, real and whatnot? Not really. It just felt more like a big giant, like, we did this type of thing.
I mean, I don't know that I'd say it felt real, but I really like the layout. I like the design. I like exploring it, sort of. Like, I like driving around, and I like looking out the car window and seeing giant spiraling, non-real life mountains, like
right next to it looks like a very real forest.
Yeah,
I know one of the biggest things for me that it took to try and get over and figure out is like this is the first Final Fantasy game that doesn't have what I would call the grand journey. When I say grand journey, I mean a very large amount of varying atmospheres. And it feels like your characters takes weeks to like go on this journey to get where they need to go to do things, right? This game doesn't really have that. You end up going and doing all of your stuff in the main world, which still feels sadly really small. Like 10 minutes to go and drive from one side of the map to the other side of the map. if you don't use the fast travel. Which again, 10 minutes just to go and drive from one side to the other. That's like my city. So is it really that big of an area visually versus like aesthetically to your own area? So this is like, for me at least, this is where I get lost in the appeal to open world games, to try and have this, because it's just the same goddamn thing around you that you could end up doing if you just leave your own house as well too. Like I get it. It's all these really cool little things. You go and see the gas station here, a gas station there, another gas station there. But realistically, what place anywhere in the world has 7 gas stations within a 10-minute drive?
Most places.
Most places.
In a rural area, though. In a very rural area.
I literally I grew up in a rural... I grew up in an area. I grew up in a suburb, not really a rural area, but I wasn't like next to a big city. It was in New Jersey, which is very close to like Trenton, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston. They're all within 3 hours, and I literally could go to one corner and have 3 gas stations at the one corner. It's like, this is like competing, right? Like one of you is not doing well, and it's gonna be a supermarket like soon.
I'm in Canada, damn it! I know exactly what it's like.
AKA. Anywhere, my chat said anywhere outside of Canada, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like,
damn, I misread that shit. Well, it just doesn't feel, I don't know, man. It's
like, I'm not worried about it feeling real myself. I
know.
I forgot fuel was a mechanic, because my car has infinite fuel. I legit forgot that was a mechanic in the game.
10 gil to fill up, man.
Dude.
Yeah, the fact that it's 10 gil, no matter how empty your tank is, was also really dumb. At that point, don't even have the mechanic. That was a total waste of time.
Yeah. It just felt the whole just having the camaraderie in this open world area that they're trying to fill up. And again, where people found ways to get lost, I just couldn't get attached to getting lost in it at all. Like, I know that I could have just gone to the map and got that point, gone to the map and got that point, and then that point, and then that point, and then sell all of it and then go and repeat it. But really, did it end up kind of progressing the camaraderie at all between my characters at all? Maybe the time and effort that I'm putting in, and I have to appreciate that I'm doing it with my best buds. But
I absolutely feel like it builds up the brotherhood between them. That's one of the things that the game did really, really well.
Especially if you sleep at all the camps and all the motels. There's a scene in a motel out in the Sky region where in the middle of night, Prompto comes up to you outside the hotel, and they literally discuss episode 2 of Brotherhood, where he's like, you acted like it was for the first time, and Prompto discusses all of his insecurities and why he didn't, and then you can be like Nox, be like, yeah, dude, I understand, or you can be like, fuck you, let's go inside, I don't want to hear it.
You can just be like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Wasn't that part of a story? Because I got that. Yeah. I know I triggered that too. I think that was part of an actual story.
I just rested there. I had no reason to rest there, and I just rested there.
Oh, it was probably you have to rest there during the story, I think. And it's probably the first time
I was doing a hunt that was completely unrelated to anything, and I got that scene.
Interesting.
Yeah, you probably did the hunt before you went there in the story, is what I'm saying.
No, I was literally like, my next part of the story was go to like the Disc of Kothas, and that was I did it like before then.
Maybe it was like once you get so far through the game and then you rest at a certain rest, then you end up getting the cutscene possibly. But it's just like, I wish that they end up forcing a lot of those interactions instead of just randomly coming across them as much as it is. Like,
well, that's kind of where Final Fantasy 15 draws its line between people who just want to play a game through beginning to end and the people who want to go through and invest in their world. Like sleeping in all these locations, building the on-tours are good ways of building. For example, I have one where I had to fish up the Liege of the Lake. And when I do it, Gladio literally jumps in the water and has to carry the fish out. And you're just like, yeah. And he's just like, see, you can do this. Then you have the Cup Noodle quest. And you have like, I felt like there was plenty of ways to build the main 4 characters, especially after Brotherhood. By the end of it all, I got it. Like, I understood. It made sense why these 4 characters were like almost never separated, which we'll talk about when we talk about the story in a little bit.
And it's actually kind of funny talking about that aspect. Did you guys end up playing Xenoblade Chronicles X?
No.
I highly recommend it. Xenoblade Chronicles X kind of did it in the complete opposite. It was another big open world game. This is actually, Final Fantasy 15 is probably the closest game that I could think of to Xenoblade Chronicles X in ways of trying to progress the story in an open world way with side quests and everything. But what Xenoblade Chronicles X ended up doing that I really enjoyed more, and it gives me a lot more appreciation for that game as well too, is that they force a lot of that content on you, and you had to reach a certain level in order to progress the main story afterwards too.
Man, that wouldn't have been a problem in 15.
And it's like, I would have loved if they did that in 15. They force you, go out and hit this area, this area, this area, go do these quests, and then come back and see me. It feels a lot more forced, but I think it would have ended up getting, it would have forced that feeling then a little bit more for people that are looking for the camaraderie as well too. And it gives, for everyone else that just wants to play the game, like landmarks that you should go out and check versus just kind of having the extremely free world as well too. And I just wish that there was a little bit more forced information in 15, I guess is the big thing, especially for trying to build up your character.
Well, speaking of forced information, you get to touch on that a little bit more because the next thing to talk about is the story.
Wait, we're moving on to that now already?
Yeah.
There was two other things though.
I got one more thing for gameplay.
Okay,
Actually,
you guys keep saying one more
mine
thing.
is for story. No, that one's for
I
story.
didn't keep saying one more thing.
No.
Yeah,
I'm done for one more thing.
What are your two more things? Because Morag never let you say them.
We needed to do weapons.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's the weapon feels.
Daggers, please, always.
Daggers felt fantastic in this game. They had the nice, quick gameplay. You're in there, you're hitting.
Let me tell you about daggers.
You're dancing around. Well, you're a big fan because of your vitality down daggers.
Let me. Yeah, dude. Literally, those Delta daggers were game changing. I found them outside of the rocks of Ravito very, very early on, and I hit the hunt there, the level 67 hunt. And I was like, this is going to be a disaster. He's hitting me for 9,999. I can't get any damage in on him. I hit him with those, and it triggered, and then I armored her, and I was like, where's his health going? Then you have the assassin daggers for poisoning. I kept enemies poisoned the whole game. If an enemy wasn't poisoned, I was playing the game wrong, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what I love. The daggers, I felt like every dagger I had a reason to be using. Like, whereas the other weapons, and on top of that, the biggest downside daggers, there's no link attacks. There are 0 link attacks. There's no blindside attacks. They're literally like a weapon that separates Noctis from the rest of the party, in a way. That's the balance because they have the quickest recovery time, so you're least likely to be hit. That's what I was talking about earlier with the iframes on blindside and link strikes being something reserved for weapons slower than the daggers. The swords, I like the swords.
Basic sword that only Noctis could use was okay, I thought. It wasn't anything special. Which
the Ultima weapon is what I'm looking forward to getting. The Ultima weapon's pretty easy to get, and it's 300-ish attack, increases MP by 30 and magic by 40, I think. And then on top of that, it's got the absorption mechanic, where when you kill an enemy with it equipped, you have a chance to get elemental energy.
Oh, yeah.
So, but some of the other swords, the sword I noticed the least was the demon slaying weapons. All the demon slaying weapons.
Yeah, I haven't bought those yet. I haven't gotten the money for it. They seem like, okay, how often am I really fighting demons right now? Is it going to be that much more effective against them?
And then you get to some of the later chapters, and you're like, yeah, I'm always fighting demons. Great swords, I thought were fantastic.
I hated them.
I loved the great swords.
Oh, I couldn't stand them. I mean, I only used I used the Masamune early in the game, and
I got rid of that shit immediately.
Well, and then I got the Sword of Tenebrae or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's the one that's out to the west of Hammerhead, and then you can buy it.
And I was
a
like,
little bit later.
This swing's too slow for me. And part of it is that I didn't totally have a handle on the gameplay system yet. So, like, if I'd for link strikes and for blindside strikes, it probably would have been really good once I started to get better about those. But before then, that slow weapon just drove me insane. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, I grew to love it. Like, I used it with the daggers pretty much the entire game. If I had a group of enemies, I would always do the arm switching, which is where you attack with one weapon, you switch the weapon, and it triggers the secondary attack that you usually get from, like, stopping and then starting again. You know Devil May Cry controls where there's, like, certain combos?
You hit, pause, hit.
Yeah, you hit, pause, hit. The Greatsword's hit, pause, hit is basically Tempest, so it's a giant AoE, so I would use that on packs. Like
that was really cool. But early on, I could never get the timing down for it, so I was like, screw it, I'm not going to worry about it.
There's actually an accessory that automatically switches your weapons whenever you finish an attack. So like in the middle of a weapon combo, it'll just change to a different weapon, and then it immediately trigger the whatever secondary attack it is.
That's pretty
Interesting.
Yeah. So I didn't make use of it too much because by that point I was literally 3 daggers and a king's weapon. But it was nice.
That's pretty sweet setup.
So guns, I have a love-hate relation with the guns. I can cheese shit so easy with the guns, but by no means is it fun. I don't know if you guys enjoyed the guns. I was like, Prompto, what you're doing over there, that looks fun. I don't get to do that with my gun. Okay, my gun is
yeah, I never used
reload,
which
is like, oh, I have infinite ammo, but I gotta reload. Cool, got it. It wasn't fun. Did you know there's a sniper rifle in the game that Prompto cannot equip? And the way that it works is you press R1, he looks down the scope, and then you press triangle.
Oh, what?
Yeah. And it has it is specifically designed to break appendages. It has, so Hard Edge, the greatsword, has a 1.8 times break modifier. It is the strongest weapon that Noctis can use to break body parts, is the Hard Edge. The Cerberus has a 10 times break modifier. If you land a single shot, you will odds are break a body part. But it is and you can't give it to Prompto, it is literally a sniper rifle. It was a lot of fun to use. I actually really liked it, but it sucks when you can't hit anything and you see through the scope like a wall of enemies just kind of charging towards.
Just hit something out there, Jesus Christ!
That was so funny. Oh, that was fantastic.
What are the benefits to breaking?
You can stagger. You can open up vulnerability. On the Magitech, on the big Magitech dudes, you can break their weapons permanently.
Yeah, and just getting different items too. Like to get ultimate weapon, you need to kill the horns. You need to break the horns off in order to get the sturdy Zayla horn or whatever. Which, oh boy, that was a fun farm.
That was I got really lucky. I got it in 1 horn break.
I got it. It took me like probably 7 or 8, 9 times of refreshing that one quest. Took a while.
Then there's the shields. The shields I felt were a nice mix. I really liked just straight up blocking instead of dodging in one direction. But it felt so different from everything else, I didn't use it too frequently. I just gave one to Gladio, and Gladio survives everything.
I liked the shield. The reason I liked the shield is because I liked it in the Platinum demo, and I felt like it made blocking easier in that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it did that here. So after a while, like it was kind of like, well, shields are not as fun as I'd expected them to be this time around. It didn't end up playing out the way that I had expected it after the Platinum demo, so I started using just anything else. I was mostly dagger, sword, and spear.
I noticed that. I don't like the spears at all.
You don't?
I feel like they're
Why
completely
not?
worthless. They're somewhere between the speed of a greatsword and the attack of a sword, with none of the benefits in between. The only thing I like is the one that warp strikes. I don't remember what it's called. It warp strikes you directly up, and you crash down on
I loved that. That was so much fun.
That one is great.
I loved that one. It made me feel like a freaking amazing dragoon, man.
Exactly.
And it made me feel like I was, again, not abusing iframes, but at the same time, it felt like it was part of the combat. It was happening, and that was a realistic way of approaching it.
I thought it was one of the best feeling spear attack systems in any game I've played. It was very Dragoon-esque. Poking, poke, and then you're flipping off to the side, poking them from the air, flipping up even higher, crashing down on them. Everything that they did with the spear felt great, I thought.
I just felt like I hit this really awkward spot between the swords and the great swords, and it wasn't fun. I felt it didn't have the AoE of the great sword. It didn't have the single target of my daggers. But if I was fighting an enemy that was big and I needed to hit him from the air, that's what I would use it for. Because in air, it's so much better than every other weapon type in the game.
Yeah, by far. I really wish I had used my spear more in the Aranea fight.
Which is a great fight.
Hot Dragoon on Dragoon action would have been a lot of fun.
I was actually a little upset for myself. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm a shitty gamer. I'm a super duper shitty gamer. And it does take a while for me to understand some systems sometimes. But the combat, the weapons, I really wish that they did, and I said this a little bit earlier, is that they do a little bit much better way of explaining that if you hold forward or back or left or right when you are, tapping or holding the button, it's going to do slightly different attacks each time, especially with the greatsword. if you have not played around with the greatsword and actually done like, you know, directional and button pressing, it makes the weapon even better than just holding it down. Like I actually didn't even fully realize that holding down the button was possible also till near the end of the game as well,
yeah,
too.
Holding down the button for the greatsword, it feels awful.
You know, it's super bad.
But
and
forward an attack where you just quickly like that. Oh, the lunge forward, so good.
But like I understand that when they were trying to explain, like, you know, you can guide your weapon in certain directions. Like I don't know if it was supposed to be more of a mistranslation or just to say you can do different attacks versus you can guide the weapon. Like because I know they were trying to make it a very flowy combat to look visually amazing and responsive, but I tried doing it in that fashion and it didn't feel like it was very responsive in that way. I had to physically push the button with it, and it had that disconnect of being flowy to being more responsive on my side as well too. So I wish they explained that a little bit better, communication wise. Anyway,
what other weapons? The king's weapons we touched on earlier, and then magic we touched on earlier, and then I don't like tools at all. I thought tools were fucking atrocious.
Really? They were good on. I liked them on.
I gave whatever tool I wanted to actually use in combat. I just gave the prompt and said, listen, if he fucking gets hit while using it, that's on him. I don't give a shit about him. It's like, oh, let me use the bioblaster. Fucking 12 seconds later.
But I mean, so you have to charge it up for a long time to get the wave of bioblast out of it? Is that what it is?
No, the triangle attack is literally...
Oh, the triangle, right, okay.
Yeah,
because its basic attack is like a big shockwave.
All of them are a big shockwave. Every single one of them was a big shockwave.
And, I mean, that part's fairly effective. I've only used the Bioblaster because I got Bioblaster Plus, and I was like, hey, what kind of damage does this do? Pretty respectable.
It's nice when Prompto randomly decides to do it 5 times in a row, and you just hear and everything just fucking falls over.
Yeah.
That was one downfall to some of the weapons that as soon as you hit damage cap, stop using that weapon. Go to a faster one.
Yep. That's eventually what led me to daggers over using the greatsword at all. Although the greatsword for the final secret dungeon, I needed it. I couldn't survive nearly as much without the iframes of Link striking. And you'll understand that dungeon when you get to it, because it's pretty much going to take everything you thought you knew and make you just say, fuck it.
Focus on all the cheesiest stuff you can.
Because items aren't allowed.
Yeah, it was Baru was in the channel when I was going through it and trying to figure out some of the extra dungeon stuff. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if you actually want to try doing that no item playthrough because, well, you're going to have to do it no matter what. I was just like, oh.
It's easily... And that's where the Elder Corals are, by the way, where you can't use the items. And, yeah, that blaster attack... The one that one-shots you if you hit them when they're healing. If you hit them from the front while they're healing.
Yeah, I ended up running into that when I was just doing one of the quests, and I didn't realize I was doing it until I was like, what just happened?
You're just why is my health at 0? It doesn't even just send you to danger. It ends your life.
Yeah.
And there's a Coral that attacks you as soon as you leave the second fucking tomb of the game.
You can't go from the front. You have to go directly from behind no matter what.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to have like a combat system where you feel like you're able to go around as much as possible, but you do actually have to step back and be like, where do I want to be?
That's great and all, except that in the no item dungeon, they just put their back to a wall.
So fun.
And I was like, I wonder if the gun's working. It's sitting there healing, and I'm like, this is not doing anything.
Okay, we done with gameplay?
I think we're done with gameplay. I think it's story time.
The last thing on it that will
damn
transition us into story.
He did say
I did say two, and this transitions us into story, which is why I wanted to end with it. Okay. For the open world thing, what I really liked, something that I also liked a lot in Tales of Vesperia, is the character dialogue and interaction. While they played it, it repeated itself a lot of the time.
Oh, hi there, opening. Oh, hi there, opening. Oh, hi there, opening.
Just walking around and having the characters talk to each other, whether it was in the car, doing silly stuff in the car, or whether it was running around a hillside and having the characters interact some there. That's something that helped set it aside from Final Fantasy XII, where it was just your characters running around the countryside. I felt like this developed the camaraderie and each of the individual characters very well. I loved listening to Prompto go da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then Gladio being like, you're just having fun, aren't you?
Stop bitching, start killing.
Yeah, I love that one.
Sounds like Duke Nukem. I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum. I was waiting for him to say, oh yeah. So other than oh hi there opening, Piercer is easily the most annoying skill in the game, because not only does he say oh hi there opening every time, he whistles every time.
Yeah.
He's just like, and he's dancing too. He's just like, I'm like,
Well, it's like it was finding other ways to increase the camaraderie. That's the big thing. Having that little bit of banter, that building trust with each other.
I will say that even in the secret dungeons, they have their own unique banter, which is nice for the secret dungeons itself. It's
cool.
not a lot, but it is. They did record something for it, so I was content with it not just being like, it's like Kingdom Hearts where they're just like, just use fucking audio from the rest of the game and just use it again here. What are you talking
Just recycle
about?
it. No big
Just
deal.
recycle the audio we already recorded. Don't record anything new. Just make it silent. There you go. Okay, so moving into the story. Before we talk about the story itself, I will say this: I'm not disappointed in the story. I'm very happy with the story. In fact, I'm happier with the story than I would have been if this statement had been true. 40 hours to clear the story is the biggest load of crock of shit that they could have possibly said.
40 to 50. No, they said 40. Like, no, it's probably going to be 50. They corrected themselves.
They anticipated people to play the game that seems like something that's specifically designated, not to necessarily people who do the side quests, but people who are going to spend all their time building their relationship with the characters. Like, at least going places. Because there were a ton of places. I never went to Hunter headquarters once until the post-game. I didn't even know it was a place.
Oh.
So, like, I feel like that statement was specifically designed for people who want to read every article on the ground and to pick up every book on the side and to get, like, every bit of information the game has. That may have taken me 25 hours if I did all of that. This was easily a 20, even a 18-hour story around, approximately.
Yeah.
And I will say, as my
I feel like it was probably more around the 25 to 30. If I had focused on the story instead of some of the side stuff I was doing.
Lyric had 18 hours and 10 minutes of stream time. Beat the story.
That's with minimal side questing. I know the world record for the main story right now, I think, is 9 hours ish with all the cutscenes and everything. Like, no.
It took me 24.
Yeah. I'd say that I'm actually not disappointed in that. I'm disappointed they made the statement in the first place. What ultimately I felt like happened is I got a story that had no fat. That's how I've been telling it to people. I feel like I got exactly
nice change of pace.
Exactly the information I needed to get through this game. Is there more I'd like to know? Sure, I'd like to know more about Core. Sure, I'd like to know how Iris is doing, or Iris. I'm sorry, Iris. I'd like to see Iris the Demon Hunter.
I think you said it the best. It was a story from
Noctis's perspective,
Noctis's point of view, which is like we really haven't had a game like that. Minus the handful of scenes with Lunafreya or flashbacks or the Empire scene. Like those are the only 4 scenes max out of the entire.
Most of the flashbacks are Noctis talking to Umbra, and almost you seeing it like he's looking at the book and taking what she wrote, and then you see it, and then you're coming back and you respond to it. That's usually what most of the flashbacks are. The Empire scene is the only scene that had no place in the game. It does nothing to build any characters. It sets up false expectations for what's going to happen in the story.
That was my least favorite part.
And most of those characters will die without you ever seeing them again. 2 of them you kill in an optional base mission. 1 of them ends up being an ally, and the other one dies off screen, and then you have to kill him again. And then the other one dies off screen, and then you kill him in the first place.
Like that then is like going to be like a second thing where like they go and show you and tell you stuff during the main story sequence that has 0 bearing on the story.
Right.
Like why wouldn't you show me the other stuff instead of just expecting me to see it? And granted, again, maybe you just, again, if it's from Nox's point of view, you just never run into it, so therefore you don't get it. You rob yourself of that story then. So where does it end up going then? Like, how does that pacing end up working? If you decide to go and only do what they say is main story, do you purposely rob yourself of other side content like that?
I feel like you do. I feel like you don't get the full main story unless you do side stuff, which is incredibly strange.
You know what I hope they end up doing that in the future? Like something that would make me so happy. Just go and put on the map main story side quests. Stuff that adds to the main story. Put it on the map. Let me know how to trigger it. I will be happy.
I want them to put on tours where the on tours are located. Like if a camp has an on tour, I just want a little plus sign next to it, because the on tours do quite a bit of character building. Even if it's just, usually it's just the conversation before and the conversation after. Everything in between is kind of fluff. It's just you actually doing whatever they requested. But those are, I feel, and then the scene like Prompto. I have my chat. Some people in my chat have never gotten that Prompto scene we talked about earlier. They never got it because they never had to sleep in that. Odds are you will sleep in that camp at some point. In fact, when you're going to Cayenne, that's one of the routes you can take is directly past that. But there's no and then I don't even think Iris asks you if you want to stop there because it's not the intended path. So, I felt the story just. I felt like if I didn't see Kingsglaive and Brotherhood, it would have been much less satisfactory. And I feel anyone who didn't before playing this will be much less satisfied.
Actually, I almost think the backwards, because you're shown so much information in Kingsglaive. If like I want to know, like we get to see the Emperor in Kingsglaive. We got to see like 3 awesome characters that we just didn't even get to see at all in the game at all. Like those were open storylines that were just gone, and then we come into the game.
Well, they're not,
and it's just
there's
like,
only one character whose storyline is gone at this point. But the main reason for Kingsglaive is Ravis for me. Ravis, you get to see a little bit more of Arden. You get to see King Regis, why he, what his kingship was actually like. And also even King's Tale, believe it or not, which is the shitty little mobile game that came with GameStop.
That was not shitty. That was way better than it had any right to be.
I meant more of the quality. I have a code for it. Somebody sent me a code for it. I haven't played it yet. But anyway,
I played it. It was a lot more fun than I expected.
It's a beat 'em up, isn't it? Side-scrolling beat 'em up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
With some neat mechanics.
Yeah, King's Tale is, again, another little background. I think the only thing that Kingsglaive doesn't do nicely is it kind of implies what happens to Nyx, and you see what happens to Nyx in Final Fantasy 15. I don't know if you guys noticed. He is one of the 4 hanging dead bodies at the end of the game.
Someone mentioned that in my chat, but I hadn't.
I went back and looked because I was like, why would he be here? Like his body, like what? But then I went back and looked. I was like, that's definitely the douchebag haircut. That's definitely Nyx.
No, that was one of the characters. I'm like, do we don't get to see him anymore? But yeah.
Also, you can get Ulrich's daggers, which give you, I think, +10 or +20 to all stats or something like that. You get those from killing all of the. I don't remember the location, but you have to kill all of the demons in Insomnia at a certain point in Insomnia, and then a Lich spawns, and when you kill the Lich, it drops Ulrich's daggers. So that's a nice little thing that pieces of him are still present there. But what's his face? I can't remember the other dude's name. The other dude who lives with the limp. I'm just like, the other Kingsglaive who lives at the end of Kingsglaive. I can never remember his name. The chat will remember. He literally says, "Goodbye, Luna." And then Luna walks away, and he's just like, all right, whatever, I guess. Libertus.
Yeah.
There you go.
The one with the weirdest
He's the only
voice.
loose end I feel Kingsglaive created. Because, like, what the fuck happened to this guy? Where are you, Libertus? I know you have a limp, but unless you became Dave, nothing lines up. And it definitely didn't become Dave.
And that's why it's just like, I don't even know if it's like someone said in the chat, it's like, it adds a little bit of richness to the story, but it almost feels like it leaves more questions for people that are grasping for that story at times.
And I felt like a lot of people were grasping for story here. I noticed that if you don't read things on the ground, you miss a lot.
I read everything, man. Everything.
In chapter
I read everything
1,
I found.
In chapter 2, some people were turning into my stream during chapter 2. And I was talking about, I wonder what Bahamut's going to look like. And someone's like, that's a spoiler that Bahamut's in the game. I was like, there's a fucking book in chapter 1 that tells you Bahamut's one of the Astrals.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, we know who the Astrals are. And it's the typical big summon types you expect. And of course,
Glacian,
Bahamut is going to be the god of gods, and he'll be the main one.
But, like, that's not a spoiler. It's like the information's on the ground. And it is a spoiler, like, for chapter 1 spoilers. But, like, now me knowing that he was going to be a giant humanoid knight god with an Ultima Blade, that's a spoiler.
Yeah. telling you, oh, he comes down and kind of helps you fight Ifrit, but Ifrit's just like, yeah, whatever, fuck off.
I can't remember. For the Astrals, is it the larger they are, the stronger they are, or the smaller they are, the stronger they are? I don't remember.
I don't remember reading that description.
I don't remember reading that one either.
I remember, I think Tabata specifically mentions somewhere in an interview that their size, it represents their place in, like, in cosmology.
In the Pantheon? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it represents their place in the hierarchy, but Ifrit held his own pretty well.
Ifrit fucking... Ifrit, this is the best Ifrit. They were like, oh, you know how Ifrit's usually that Ifrit's like everyone's like, oh, you know, Ifrit's always so shitty. We'll probably see him right in the beginning, and then Ifrit's like, oh, you saw me in the beginning, all right, chapter 0, bitches.
Remember me, motherfuckers?
No, it's like opening the game and seeing it's like, I wonder who this is. Where's this place? Let's just sit here. I sat there for like 5 minutes, just like trying to talk with chat. What do you think this is, guys? It's like probably Ifrit.
Was that the scene that we saw later, or was that King Regis against Ifrit?
No, that was Noctis. That's the same scene.
Okay.
Same scene.
Okay. Damn.
Because they do the
remember
flash
that scene by the time I got there.
Yeah.
I just I loved Ifrit, and I liked the 6. The 6 felt like very real threats and but at the same time very real necessities in the journey there. Like the reason for the 6 existing felt very important. What felt odd to me was how important the 6 were amongst the area of the game you get to play, because there's way more of a map out there than what we actually get to see in the game. From what I recall, 15 versus 13 was supposed to be a trilogy. It was designed to be a trilogy, and they've worked that into what is now one game for Final Fantasy 15 with the same ending that was supposed to be the end of the trilogy.
Versus was supposed to be a trilogy?
If I recall correctly, Versus itself was supposed to be a trilogy. It was designed with which there are 5 continents in total. I believe outside of Insomnia. Well, Insomnia is on one of the 5 continents. We were having this discussion earlier today. And so we got to see maybe a 5th of what is essentially the world map. And that some of that scene where you take the train and you don't get to explore any of the areas outside that train that you're riding on the way to the capital. There's an entire mountain range that you don't get to explore. There's all the stops along the way, the open deserts, things like that. There's a lot missing in terms of landscape that we don't get to actually see. And it feels like that was one of those things from Versus 13 that didn't make it into 15.
Interesting.
So I can't really say my expectations were that high on it because it wasn't something I kept a prize to, but it's the world's much bigger out there.
Yeah, I wondered if we were ever going to see that much of the world, and then we rode a train for 5 chapters in a row. And I was like, no, I guess not.
No, that was, and I kind of when it was all said and done with the story, I did have comments about the story early on where me being in an open world, I didn't care so much about the story in the early parts of the game. I got it. I knew it was happening. I knew it was there. But with the huge breaks in between, I suddenly appreciated the limited linearity of old school Final Fantasies, where they put you on a path. You have one line to get there, but there's like a couple of rooms along the side. I don't think any Final Fantasy games no Final Fantasy game has ever been open world. Having a world map is not the same as being open world. This is the first Final Fantasy where I felt like there was no direction other than here's where you'll have to go next. You can go do anything else.
Not even
fucking
have to.
do anything you want until then, but you'll have to at some point go to this spot. And I felt like the first half of the story was weaker until chapter 9 through 14, where outside of an incredibly long sequence of events of chapter 13 was a much stronger and more cohesive storytelling experience for me.
Yeah, I got a quote here from an interview. That's heard in Skype.
With the trilogy?
It's big. Basically, they said that they want to try... They didn't say trilogy. They said they went through Versus. They tried to take out as much as possible to put into 15, but they thought that it was best to confine the entire story within a single title. They don't actually say trilogy or multi-game, but they say they need to put it all in a single title. So to create a narrative that utilizes the original story as much as possible.
Oops, there we go.
But still stay faithful to the original 13 story. So.
Hard is not listed in any... there is no hard mode. So my chat is saying that they found that there's hard mode. Like, no, there isn't. There's easy, normal, and default. Whatever the fuck that means.
I think default might end up making it so then some fights might scale back and forth, maybe between easy or something. I don't know, because wait mode default was weird. Sometimes it popped up, sometimes it didn't. I just turned it off altogether.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had that same issue. Maybe I should turn off default if that's what's causing it.
So it's interesting though, because when it comes down to story, I felt that there was some elements to the story that just felt like they were revealed and then they were just kind of thrown out. Big thing for me, the king's weapons. Like they said, go get all 13. I talked about this earlier, but again, there was really no basis on making the final fight easier or harder based on how many weapons you had. There was no, you know, all the side quests that you ended up doing. There was no, those characters don't come and try and help you at the end either in the final battle. Nothing ended up having this full bearing to try and help progress the final chapter in any way, which really felt lackluster. You did all these things, the world, you did all this stuff, and then it's just like, let's go do the final fight, guys. It's been 10 years.
What was interesting about that, though, is the entire point of I agree it would have been cool if the last fight was in some way affected by how many of the Armiger swords, because believe it or not, I don't know if you paid attention, but even if you haven't colleced,
you have them all floating around you anyway. Which
yeah,
I
you
really
have
didn't
them
like.
all, regardless, in that final sequence. But one thing that's important about those is, for a lot of people, it's I just need to go collect weapons. That's the whole story. Oh, I need to go kill the Suffets. That's the whole story. What's missed is that since Noctis was born, he was groomed for what happens at the end of the game. He wasn't groomed to be the next king. It wasn't something that just happened.
He was groomed to be the true king.
He was groomed to be the person who purged that who kills Arden. So King Regis knew that evil existed, and so has the entire lineage of kings, which is touched on in Arden's story. And the oracles have obviously given the responsibility of also doing that. So the king, and as an extension core, is the one responsible for grooming him to obtain the weapons, while the oracle is specifically groomed to give him the power of the astrals, because he needs all of it. Because he needs all the power of all 13 previous kings, now 14 because of actually I think they explain that his father is King 13, and I think Arden is considered King 0, so there's 15 kings total. Something
Makes
along
sense.
those lines. I don't remember exactly.
Wouldn't it say like he was no, wasn't there like 100 plus in succession?
Well, I know that at the very end. Oh yeah, what's the letter C? 113. Yeah, the letter C in Roman numerals is 100. Yeah, because I remembered I think it's 114. Because I think King Noctis was 114.
He was the 114th.
Yeah,
So it's just like
C,
to only know
X1.
that there was 13 weapons.
13 weapons. His father became one of those, like the wall or whatever they called it, the old wall or whatever it calls.
Yeah.
And then Noctis.
Wall of Lucia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
The wall,
Lucis.
But I don't know, like I would have loved to see more of that. But like you were saying too, like, you know, it's a fat free story and maybe Noctis just didn't care. But and this is where it's going to kind of be sucky. Like if they end up just putting that as DLC.
So I took a look at the current planned DLC, and I could pull it up again if you'll give me the courtesy of a minute or two, and I will read to you what is in the season pass, and we can discuss where you think they're going. While I'm pulling that up, though, were you content with a fat-free story? Because I know a lot of people in Final Fantasy who are fans of Final Fantasy, it's not about whether there's fat or not, it's how much information is put in the main story.
It's like after you ended up saying that it was a story from Nox's point of view, like to me at that point, I'm like, well, shit. That kind of just breaks down like everything I really had beefs with. It really does. Like because like it's also the first time they've actually done this type of story as well too, out of any of the games, except for maybe FF10, because it was always his story.
This is my story.
This is our story. No,
even
it's actually
then-
my story.
But even then,
Gotcha.
you had characters that built up the information to make the character feel dumb, that he wasn't educated, because he was from the world. He wasn't from the world, so he was being educated about it. But in here, you have your three comrades that just gave two shits about anything that was happening. It was just like, it's us. We don't care. And you don't actually get any of the questions being answered in like the regular style, JRPG style. Be like, man, I sure wish we could do that. And all of a sudden, character comes in and be like, well, did you know, blah, 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 blah. Here's some lore. But you didn't get that very much to kind of fill in holes in the story. And that was probably one of the biggest things. You could love it or hate it, but it was different. And I felt that it didn't make the world feel a little bit more alive. But again, it was a story from his point of view, and he felt like he just didn't give two shits because he didn't know what he was doing half the time. It took him how long to go and put the ring on, and he only put it on because
3 weeks, I think, like 3
Yeah.
Several weeks.
And but even then too, that's actually one of my other pain points is no real information is given about what the ring bears.
Unless you watch Kingsglaive.
And it's like, I wish that it offered more of that in between. And this is where I feel that from the end of chapter 9 into 10, there was a shit ton cut. Like that whole in between sequence, they could probably go off and do a whole other 2 chapters of information about what actually happened in that aspect. Instead, they have Gladios being all pissy for an entire chapter and be like,
that annoyed the shit out of me.
Okay, bro, we're good now. And it's just like, you just... What? What happened?
Okay.
My problem was that, I liked not having a lot of fat. I liked what was pared down, but I didn't like the lack of reaction a lot of the time. Like, the characters are just like, well, the Empire's done. Everybody there's dead. The end. There's like no reaction. They're just like, okay, well, let's go get the crystal. Anyway, I mean, we're still doing that.
I went to pull up the list, and you know how some websites just have an ad that plays randomly after like a minute? That just happened. Right now.
Definitely. GLaDOS DLC is going to be whenever he goes MAI and gets his scar.
Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. So currently the Season Pass lists 7 things, one of which is actually free, but because it's downloadable content, they're just putting it as something you get with the Season Pass.
Yeah.
The original thing was something called a booster pack, whatever the fuck that means, because we don't have it yet. Episode Gladiolus, which will be first and is likely going to take place during the scene where he just disappears and then obtains a bunch of scars. And a lot of people keep telling me that scenes like that, because those are present for all 3 characters. All 3 characters have a scene where they are missing and there's unexplained story. And we know they didn't begin developmental episodes, but for me, again, it's a story from Noctis's point of view. So apparently whatever the fuck they did in that time doesn't matter enough for us to know to complete the story. So,
well, I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff in the side content that we've had already isn't important to the real story of the game. Yeah. Brotherhood, not important to the real story of the game. Kingsglaive, not important to the real story of the game.
And that's why it's not present as part of the main story that's told in the game.
Yeah.
So Gladiolus will be one that's focused primarily on action combat. Episode Ignis will be one that is focused mostly on stealth combat. Episode Prompto will be focused on an FPS type style combat or more gun focused style combat. There is the multiplayer 4-player co-op mode that is, and it says 4-player very specifically. It's its own mode,
which we'll talk about why that.
It's its own mode. Really. It's its own separate mode. I want to be very clear. It is a separate mode.
For people that have played Xenoblade Chronicles X, it's probably going to be done in that same fashion.
That is what my chat said earlier today. You just covered exactly what my chat said. It was that same way. So
it's a lobby room, and you sign up for a quest. You get other people to sign up for a quest, and you will port to that area of the world and do that quest. You cannot leave that area of the world, though.
And each of those allows you to go to new areas in the game that you didn't get to see before. There's also new weapons you can obtain that can be used in the full game itself. And it explains more story about likely when... these are the 3 scenes I would pick. When Prompto is knocked off the train, when Ignis is in the Leviathan battle, and when Gladiolus disappears in the middle of the game. The holiday pack was added in as something to potentially be there. But that's something we know is a free one. That's with the New Game Plus. That's also with the level cap creation, which is going to be available this month. And also the mock battle against Yosuke Matsuda, the CEO of Square Enix. If you have not Googled that fight, I recommend you do.
It's so hilarious.
And some people said there was something called an expansion pack.
Yeah, I see expansion pack is number 6 right now.
But when I looked on, I can't find it. After I bought it, I can't find it under my purchases on the PlayStation Store. But that didn't say expansion pack. It said that the multiplayer, the 4-player co-op mission
That might end up being the expansion
The
pack.
expansion. Yeah, the original way the expansion pack was detailed was an expansion pack that makes it possible to enjoy a completely new way to play Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, that was
Which
the
would be multiplayer.
expansion pack was the working title when it was first announced.
Yeah, I'm going to spend a large portion of the remaining part of the show getting the official PlayStation Store list, which I don't know why I don't just go to PlayStation Store's website and look at it. Probably because
Okay, so another pain point for me, the night darkness. I know that NPCs randomly talk about it when you're running around in the open world, but then all of a sudden you get over to the other continent, it's just like it's darkness now. You're just like nothing. And like even then, like the whole Emperor or the Empire thing, it just instantly in like a week goes evil. No, like gets overrun because of their research that they're doing into demons.
Well, Arden also plays a pretty big role in that, considering he is what is essentially 2,000 years of anguish and demons. And that's the thing about Arden is where he stands as a villain. A lot of people keep drawing a conclusion to Kefka because he technically, even though he's similar to Kefka,
he's two-sided though. He's completely two-sided.
The problem is, the thing about him is that he wants one of two conclusions. He just wants it to be done. He literally wants Noctis to become the true king. He wants you to get the blessing of the crystal. He wants all the kings to give you his assistance. He in no way wants you to die. All he wants to know is at the end of it all, is he king or is Noctis or is the true king the king?
Oh, actually, the way that I ended up seeing it was that you had Savior version of Arden, who was what you ended up seeing the majority of the game, but then you had Demon Arden, the one that absorbed all the souls and has become that evil form, which was whenever you saw him with like the leaky face, that was the demon version of him, and that was the one that we didn't get to see very much. That I wish we did. And actually,
well, I think that was just him dropping the pretense of, because up to then he was manipulating you, and he was like, "Look, I'm helping you go to this tomb and do this."
I will make sure Niflheim does nothing to attack you, man.
But no, that's the thing, though. It's like I think that Arden's character that was all about like I'm going to keep helping you, was actually the savior just saying, "Kill me. I need you to kill me." Whereas the other side of him was like, no, I'm going to kill you and be the victor. Like, I honestly think that Arden is he's a, what the hell do you call it? Why is it escape my head? Where you're supposed to be sad for him. Like, he's just like...
Sympathetic villain.
No. Shit, I don't remember what it is. I was talking about it yesterday. Damn it. But anyway, you want to feel sorry for him. He's like,
well, they want you to... So the thing is, the reason why they draw similar to Kefka is mostly because the game sets it up where he ends the world, and then you have to take
and then you go to the world of ruin.
Yeah. And that's sort of where the Kefka... But as a character, he's nothing like Kefka. He's
he laughs at you a lot. He's like Kefka without being...
Without completely being
nuts.
batshit nuts.
Yeah, but he's still pretty nuts. So it was like, well...
And on top
crazy.
of that...
Tragic villain, thank you. Tragic. He's a tragic character.
Well, the thing is, his story is tragic because 2,000 years ago, he took all this evil into his body to save the world, to stop the Star Scourge. But then the king cast him out and took his name because he's not of the current kingdom is not of the same how do I describe
same line lineage.
Yeah. And then. And the Astrals denied him passage to the afterlife because of the demons. They thought it would taint the beyond. So he's stuck in this perpetual, I can't do this, I literally don't belong anywhere kind of deal. So if he doesn't belong anywhere, he's going to take everything.
Yeah. Split personality and tragic.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't really think he was
that's how I see him as.
I agreed with Happy after I finished the game. I was like, at first, when he wanted to make sure that we got the ring, that Noctis got the ring, I was like, okay, he's wanting us to kill him. But then at the end, he's sitting on the throne, and he's like, this is it. We're going to go end this one way or the other. And I was like, oh, he doesn't want to die. He just wants this to be done.
He wants a conclusion. That's what he wants. He wants to either be the only survivor or he wants to rest in peace because he was denied his kingdom and he was denied mortality. So one way, he's getting one of those two. and he gets mortality in the end because he's purged to death.
Which was really cool.
Yeah.
What I didn't like was the leading up to that. Oh God, there's so many things we can talk about with the story. We could be on this part for 2 more hours alone. What I really didn't like at first was you meet up with Bahamut, and then Bahamut's like, "You got to die," and it's like, why? What?
So,
for what purpose?
do you want me to
Because
explain
you think
why?
So, but you find out at the end,
Okay.
but they don't explain that at all. I thought it was just a really dumb thing of like, oh, look at how deep. What I was expecting at the end was it was just like, Noctis has to die because it's deep and it's sad. And then it's like, you die because you get to go to the Beyond with the power of the ring and all the kings and,
you
all
have
the
to
crystals.
kill Arden in the
because
Beyond.
that's where he has to be killed.
Yeah.
And you're the only one that can do it.
It's like
so
the
once I saw that, I was like, oh.
The whole him dying felt like I don't know, I kind of read that way earlier. I don't know if it was actually spelled out, but
Noctis dying, you mean?
I think
Noctis.
in
I had it spoiled
I'm pretty
for me
sure in
before
an
the game
interview
officially
they
came out.
almost flat out said the story was gonna. I'm pretty sure Tabata has an interview out there somewhere where he almost flat out said that Noctis is gonna die.
yeah.
I think it was alluded to.
For a while, I thought it was going to do some sort of weird time loop because when you see Noctis, like he was wheelchair, had problems with the leg. You go and see him have the leg brace as well too, and then the father had the limp. I was just like, I wonder if we're going to do a weird time loop, and he's going to end up being father afterwards, and he's going to be his own dad or something. It was weird that every so often though they were showing they were showing a lot of Noctis's very very minute weaknesses. Physical weaknesses.
That's what it was. I'll finish. Sorry.
But really, it didn't feel like there's any main basis, unless it was something hereditary. Like, it just didn't allude to anything overall afterwards.
This comment specifically that alluded to Noctis's death was that the story was reminiscent of Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, yeah.
That was the comment that alluded to both Noctis and Luna dying in the end. That's a big question. Do you two subscribe to one of these two? Which of these two theories do you subscribe to? Prompto, Ignis, and Gladio survive against the demon hordes.
They don't.
I subscribe to they are alive.
They're dead because you see them in the Beyond, and
you don't. But you don't see them in the Beyond. Arden sees them, and they're gone in a second. He's just like, what? And then he like snaps out of it, and then Noctis is the only one there.
Why would he see them in the Beyond? He sees everybody else that he sees there.
It's the same way that fucking Yu-Gi-Oh battles Pegasus and they're just like, we're gonna put.
That's a children's card game. We're talking about real video games here.
It's interesting because you end up seeing them, like the ring exploding at the very end too, and like that to me is like, okay, so Insomnia is gone. Like that's the only thing that I can conclude is that Insomnia just had the shit blown up out of it. And whatever, and like the rest of the world's going to be fine. And that's where I can say, yeah, they're probably dead. And from what I've understood, there's some wiki out there that says they're dead, but who knows what the actual story is. We might end up getting it in the, whatever the expansion pack is going to be with the multiplayer stuff. We might end up seeing more. I don't know.
See, if it didn't say, it says it's 4-player is the thing. So either it's
got to be part of the flashback.
So by the way, so there's two things. One, the name of the multiplayer. It's called the multiplayer expansion called Comrades. That is the official PlayStation, at least the one that's listed on the PlayStation Store.
Maybe you'll be able to pick from like the group of 14 people and you'll be able to play as that person. Unique combat.
Stop.
Comrades.
Anyway, and then what was I gonna say? And the other thing was, and I have it right here in the chat. Somebody brought it up. Fuck, I can't remember. Where did it go? Where did it go now? I can't remember. I had something else.
Oh, the whole thing, like that last scene where you end up seeing like Noctis being happy, Luna, and everyone there. That's just a happy ending picture.
That's the afterlife.
Like that doesn't actually happen. that's a nice bow tie of like
somebody suggested
they're happy together in the Beyond. Yay, that's about it.
I thought it was great that after 10 years of them showing the logo of her like this, because that's the same logo for Versus 13 10 years ago, and then they evolved it to like
and then the title screen becomes a unstreamable screen after that.
I didn't have any trouble streaming it.
No, from the PS4 itself. It's
okay,
a block scene on the PS4.
Oh, it's a block. Oh,
yeah, because it's a major spoiler.
Yep.
And it's also daytime on the main menu screen to signify that the night is gone or that the darkness is gone.
Yeah.
So overall with the story, I don't know. Like, I
There's a lot of things that I didn't like in the story. Lots of parts. Like the ending, I was really pleased with the ending. There is a theory, since we are on the ending already. If there are any Dark Tower fans out there, you'll be familiar with the idea of like things looping back to the beginning. So what happens at the end is after all that stuff done, you kill him, you evaporate as well. All of a sudden, it flashes back to you guys pushing the car, the first scene of the game, and there's a possibility that the gods are like, well, now that he helped us out, now that he killed the Scourge,
do they retconned a New Game Plus?
we'll give him yeah, essentially. So there might be a time loop where they're like, okay, this time everything's better. We want you to go out and live your life. Thank you for sacrificing yourself and making the world a better place. Maybe.
It's actually
It's
kind of
just one possibility, but I don't know that I like it either.
it's kind of funny. Like even during the end of the Leviathan scene, you end up seeing Luna go up and touch Arden's arm and make it glow, and then she ends up basically passing away at that point. But it's just like you almost wonder, it's like, what is she trying to do there? And then you end up seeing the glow pop up again when she touches him in the astral realm. It's just like, what? Like it's little stuff like that. Again, that's also we don't get. That's another scene that we don't get to see from the point of view of Noctis either. So it doesn't really have like any extra information.
He's literally like
what I know
right
he's like
there.
right over there, but he doesn't get to see it because he's still shocked like what's happened when he goes and sees her afterwards. But I don't know. It's just like small little stuff like that. It's just like they're purposely putting information in front of you, but they don't tell you anything else. That's not a normal JRPG story. Actually, even then, most Western RPGs, they don't do little subtle stuff like that. They at least tell you why and intent of stuff. This is probably a very unique aspect that you can call it being lazy storytelling, or it just open information,
open interpretation.
But it feels ultimately lazy. It just feels like they're missing more information than what it is. It feels rushed. It feels like there wasn't any. It feels like two mashes of ideas together, and we never got to see the full product.
All I'll say is Arden is Sephiroth, Luna is Aerith. She goes and drowns.
So many Bible thumps.
I didn't mind so much the ending stuff. I didn't feel like most of that was unfinished with Luna and all this. The part that I didn't like was the beginning of Chapter 14, calling it the World of Ruin. Very obvious allusion to Final Fantasy VI. And what do you do in Final Fantasy VI? You go to the World of Ruin, and then you explore the shit out of it, and you see how different everything is now. In 15, you get to the World of Ruin, and then a kid picks you up, and he's like, oh, by the way, it's been 10 years. Remember me? And then he drops you off at the Hammerhead, and then you go from the Hammerhead to the final dungeon. And that is it.
Yeah,
There's nothing. You don't get to see anything of the
It's
World
like the
of Ruin.
opposite problem with Final Fantasy 13 with Grand Pulse.
Wait. Where was Core? That's a good point.
I was wondering about that too.
They tell you that Core takes up hunting to protect a certain area. I can't remember where they tell you that.
Okay.
But that he's not really spying on the Imperials anymore. He's protecting us. I forget what he's protecting.
You know what? I almost kind of hope that the multiplayer stuff opens up World of Ruin a little bit more, and that is the multiplayer area.
Yeah, comrades just going around World of Ruin.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
It would make sense because you're just trying to protect different areas, monsters, like
Gibbs on Aranea.
I want to see Iris, the demon hunter.
Iris.
The first thing I tried to do.
Her in the party.
The first thing I wanted to do when I got to Hammerhead, I was like, oh, let me see 10 years older Cindy. You can't.
Yep.
I was like, where's 10
so many
years
characters?
older?
Like, I just want to see all of those characters change. I don't want to have some kid in the car tell me, well, they're off doing this. This one's doing this. He's over there, and she's there. And now you're at Hammerhead.
Did you go first person when Talcott was driving you? He had all the Cactuar figures.
Yeah, I had the Cactuars.
I saw that. It was cute. It was awesome.
Well, I don't think the stores are particularly against, being shoplifted at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah. I know that one other thing people were talking about, and hopefully with New Game Plus it'll be nice, is whatever content they have when you first get back from the crystal to going to Hammerhead, killing shit in there. Like the Demon Wall. I know that you can get the Demon Wall later in the game too, but it's just like you get to go and fight the super versions of all these crazy demons because you can't get back out there, which sucks. Once you get into the final zone, you're stuck in there.
As soon as you get to the car, as soon as you get to Talcott's car, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or truck. Yeah.
But even then, you're stuck by yourself too. So it's just like, is it going to be that fun trying to battle stuff? You never know.
And it's weird because Leshtalem's been the only safe place for 10 years. Not since, like, it didn't slowly devolve into that. Because when you're in Chapter 13, you pick up radio signals that one of them says Leshtalem is a safe haven for anybody. Because the knights are already.
Yeah, I remember
permanent.
hearing that one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. A World of Rune Adamantoise multiplayer version.
All it is I won't be able to see what I'm swinging at for a fucking hour. That's the only difference.
Now, this time, Adamantoise is going to end up being a volcano. Walking volcano, so you'll be able to see stuff then.
No, you won't.
The other thing that I didn't like about the World of Ruin, and I don't know if like the lore for the reasoning behind this is explained somewhere else, maybe.
Everything's intact.
Well, no, not that. It's the fact that the game is just like, it's been 10 years. It's like, why? Why would you make me have to wait 10 years? And then you don't get to see the consequences of everything that's happened since that 10 years.
The 10 years, from what I understand, because Bahamut says you need to absorb all the light, so we had to wait 10 years to absorb all the light of the crystal.
Yeah, it wasn't a quick process, in other words. It was basically the developer said, how long should we make them wait? And they said 10 years. That was like the roundtable discussion. Because clearly they could have just said a year, and they could have made it seem like all this happened in that was totally possible to write it like that.
Yeah.
It was just 10 years. I'm sure that Talcott was a big reason why they wanted to do 10 years, because they wanted you to see.
You could have that shock factor, but that's all it ultimately amounted to. Nothing else. The lack of consequences from the time skip is what bothers me.
Yeah.
You know what the consequence is? Everything's gone.
Well,
That's consequence. I just like the idea that these demons don't like ravage the town of Golden Key. It's like in the exact pristine condition it was, but there's demons. They're just like, no. I still want that 2 times EXP bed right there.
That's
I want to be able to sit at that table, all right? Don't mess it up.
That's probably going to be Ignis's DLC. I don't think it's going to be him losing his vision. If it's going to be stealth-based gameplay, it's going to be him trying to...
That's not stealth. I can't see. It's not stealth if you can't see. It's stealth if they can't see you.
Only it's super stealth. It's double stealth.
That's the opposite of stealth. He's gonna it's not stealth if I need to use my fucking cane to figure out where I'm going. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go hide behind those boxes.
I know. I would have loved to see a timer on the darkness. I don't know, man. It's just that whole chapter 9 and all, it just felt so rushed. It just did. It felt like they wanted to tell a story and they just didn't have time to tell it. They could have easily expanded that out, not to be 3 hours worth of content. They could have made it.
So that's my only complaint about the story is chapter 13 is it was too long. I had no problem with what they wanted to do in chapter 13.
Yeah,
I was like,
it went on.
I was like, oh shit, we don't ever like all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I don't have my weapons. Okay, I'm gonna have to, I can't fight obviously. So now it's like an escape.
Car got destroyed. Like the car getting destroyed. That was a good, solid movie-esque
and
storytelling
actually getting
kind of
to control the car not on rails.
Yeah.
Even though
having a real car, that would have been nice.
Because I drove forward towards one of the walls at first, and I was like, am I still on rails? Do I just need to hold the gas? Nope, gotta turn. Okay. Note to self, I am controlling this section.
Yeah. So that was nice. And then it's like, okay, they introduced the Ring of the Lucia, they introduced its 3 powers, great. At that point, you don't need to drag that sequence on any longer.
For an hour or two. Like a half an hour of the ring is plenty.
I would have been fine with even an hour, but it was...
But 2-3 hours of that sequence is too much. Like, all it needed to do is be shorter. You could have gotten to the whole reveal of Ravis much quicker. You could have gotten to the reveal of the Emperor much quicker. You could have gotten to everything quicker. Also, if Arden had physically appeared from time to time, I would have been able to tolerate it more.
Instead of him just talking over an intercom system or whispering in the darkness into your ear.
You did see him. Instead, you saw... Oh, actually, no, I guess not. You saw Promptu running around, which was one of the demons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the Magitech things. That's a really weird power, to have the power over creating a stitch in time, where basically he's showing Noctis one situation and then taking him to another time, like parallel time thing.
Yeah, I like the idea of that power. Like, it was really cool. It made him a scary, crazy, cool threat. But why do they talk about that in the chapter description
and not in the game?
Characters never discuss that at all.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I don't like in that sequence of events, where it's like there's all this stuff going on and the characters just are not reacting to it at all. The stuff with
No,
the
bro,
Empire
it's
essentially
good.
falling
I
apart.
trust you. I
The
trust
stuff with Arden's powers and them just being like out of nowhere, he's like, he can control time, and it's like, what? How do you know that?
Okay, you want to know what the single most frustrating part is? Actually even more frustrating than Chapter 13 to me? I want you to guess what's the only thing more frustrating than Chapter 13 was in those final sequences of Chapter 9 through 14.
Having the final fight be QTC or QTE.
Well,
events.
the final blow is QTE. The very final blow is QTE.
Was that what bothered you?
No.
Or? Okay.
It's hold on, Ignis is blind. You need to wait for him. Fuck that guy, all right?
That was
Don't
so...
look Chapter 10.
But I like.
He won't even know if I'm going too far ahead. He doesn't know.
Come on, that's Gladios is like, hey man, just wait up. Just wait
I
up.
liked Chapter 10
gonna
for the
rush?
emotional impact of seeing him walking around and being like, oh,
And then Swingy's
sorry.
like,
I hated Chapter 10 because Gladio was being such a massive prick the entire time. And it's like, why is he all of a sudden being a huge dick about this?
And that's what I'm saying is like between 9 and 10, it doesn't show how much, because they said a couple weeks, right, that they were kind of sitting on this train. We didn't get to see how much Noctis was sulking over the death of Lunafreya, over the death of his father, over the fact that he has to put this ring on, which we still don't have a basis of what exactly it means. Like, he looks at it and he's in physical pain and he doesn't want to put it on. Like, we don't know why that's painful at all, unless you actually watch Kingsglaive. And it sucks. It's like, if he was groomed for this and he knows that he needs this ring, because that was like half the game, get Noctis the ring, why do we not get to understand why he's so upset about putting that goddamn thing on? And everyone else, and then Gladius is like, just man the frick up and put the goddamn ring on. There's other people that need you more than yourself right now. It's like, we don't get any of the information. Instead, we just get Gladius being a big giant dick the entire time.
Yeah.
you need to man up.
Oh, all right. Leading Ignis around was really frustrating. The worst part of that, though, was the Malbro fight.
Yeah, I had a hard time seeing the triple
Run
arrows.
away and regroup.
But there
Fuck,
were
what is that supposed to mean?
the red arrow that points to where you're supposed to go that you can barely see.
And the worst part is that I was casting fire spells at him because I was like, oh, he's regenerating, kind of like a troll. You use fire on them, so I chucked fire, and the game's like, no, you can't do it.
I did the same.
You're not blind.
And you know what's
so
even
you're-
more insulting about that? Ignis throws fire.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole
throws it
purpose.
in
He's
his
like,
mouth, to be
oh, I
fair.
throw a fire into his mouth. That's all I do. It's like,
He's
oh,
a good shot for a blind man.
I understand it. Don't worry. I got this.
That was the worst sequence of the game to me. That right
Actually, funny enough, like the hardest fight for me was the Demon Ravius fight. Like,
I love
Like,
Demon Ravis.
that was by far my most enjoyable fight out of the whole game, but because it was the most difficult. Out of all the
out
main-
of story fights,
Ifrit was pretty fucking annoying if you weren't over
yeah, it's
level.
mostly just annoying because it's like, oh, my flame went out for half a second. Quick, get damaging.
And I
Yeah,
saw
no,
you
Ifrit was
using
just a dumb
wait
fight.
mode. I was like, wait mode's so good for this fight because you just warp strike to him every time his fucking fire. And then you just, if you don't have ice magic, it's the worst because ice magic removes the flame for like 2 or 3 seconds. Yeah.
And even then, like I was trying to use ice, and like it would be there, and it wouldn't be there. It would still like flicker up every so often, and then it went full blame.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so do I know if I can attack it or not at this point?
Oh, it's so annoying.
It was visually very hard to figure out a lot of that information. For that
Also,
fight.
the best part was I didn't know the trigger for the summons when it was ready.
I
So I'm
know.
running
I was
around.
staring at you. I was like, dude, it says L2. It's
Yeah, and I'm busy actually doing the fight and looking at his flames and looking at all the other particle effects going off in the area.
Actually, what was interesting is like the first phase of that fight. I don't know if you were supposed to kill him before he actually did his summoning, because you could hear the music build up and he gets out of his throne and he's about to do it. But I killed him before he could do anything, and I didn't know if it was a DPS fight at that point. Did you guys end up getting to trigger that at all?
Dude, I was level 61.
I beat the crap out of him really
motherfucker,
fast.
yeah.
Okay. Did anyone in any of the chats get that at all? Because I want to know what happened, and I didn't know if it was going to be you died, you were too slow type of scenario.
From what I understand, the longer, if the fight takes too long, you get to see 2 extra summoning sequence. You get to see Leviathan, and you get to see, I don't remember, I think Ramu. I don't think you get to see Titan. But you get to see in total, I think, four astral sequences.
No. This is. Oh wait.
Ifrit's- you're talking about Hellfire, is what you're talking about.
Yeah, because Ifrit gets out of his chair and you start hearing the summoning music happen. You're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And then, yeah, he just stands up and walks if you don't kill him before he stands up. Okay, I want to know if he just ends up killing everyone at that point. Yeah.
Oh, you can see Titan. Okay, there you go.
But I know that afterwards you have to do the QTE to kill Ifrit, or unless that was one of the things I ended up doing. That was like one of the final things I'm doing. It's like, oh, I felt like I just one-shot him that way.
The final thing you're supposed to do is Shiva.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, that was the last thing I did then.
Phrasing. So that's it. Anyway. Yeah. But, and that's also, it's unfortunate, that's the only sequence where Bahamut can actually be summoned. Is right there.
It was a really cool sequence, at least.
Yes, it was. I wasn't even disappointed it wasn't Mega Flare. I was like, that didn't matter to me. It was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Would have been really cool to see him do a Kamehameha type of Mega Flare. Since he's not actually a dragon, have him like, ah! And blast Ifrit with that. Otherwise, it was fine.
I don't know how Noctis got that upgrade with the ring when he didn't bring a rat's tail to the crystal. It doesn't make any sense, man.
Well, do we want to talk about probably the best storytelling moment of the game and the other big fight against the summon, the Leviathan fight at the end of Chapter 9?
Oh my god.
That was a great set piece.
Everything about that scene was handled magnificently.
That was like, cause like I was in such a really kind of half depressed mood getting into like Chapter 8, just doing like, it's like, oh, let's go to this new place. I get in a new place. And you know what? I think a lot of people give a lot of flack for you having to be a little bit more royal-like during the talk with what's her face?
Hillary Clinton.
In other words, hold the up button on all of your choices.
It's like, I know a lot of people kind of give that shit, but I actually kind of liked it because I was trying to build Noctis up in a character, but I wish that it did more. And I was hoping that there was going to be more scenarios like that where you get to see Noctis come in as a king and build himself up as a king. But the whole Altezia sequence I really ended up enjoying. And I was actually happy that you get to go back to Altezia to go and do more stuff, but I haven't got to do that yet.
Yeah.
But like that whole fight, the whole cutscene, everything, especially with having the drought of story for 0 to 8 and then just be railroaded with story.
See, I didn't feel like it was a drought. I just felt like doing all the side stuff makes it feel like a drought. Because as soon as you do the side stuff for 10 hours, you come back, you're like, what was that? I had a job to do, right?
Because again,
I feel like a lot of the story stuff that happens early in the game just feels like, what am I doing? What's going on?
That's
like hanging out with Iris. It's like, what's really? Why are we doing
She's like,
this?
it's almost like a date, and I'm just like, don't tell Gladio.
And this is where it feels like there is literally 2 different ideas. Like I understand during some of the reviews, and they actually said you're gonna have open world and then you're gonna have linear story, but how is it that they couldn't find a way to bridge those? They could have done a much better way to try and drive story in the open world aspect. But again, I know someone said this in the chat when I said, why don't you put points on the map that go and say, this is where story is? Because then I'm going to feel like I'm being forced to go do it in an open world sense. And it's just like, well, make it an option.
There's something to be said for the organic discovery of some of the storytelling, like finding the thing with Prompto, where you guys talk about the first time meeting and it not being the real first time and all that, where it's organic stumbling onto something like that. And that creates a unique storytelling experience.
That alludes to the road trip mentality, where they're on the trip and then this moment happens.
Honestly, I would love it. Make it so I can't fast travel. Put points on a map. I will create that journey then. Fast travel, I thought.
I want to fast travel.
It was 30 seconds. But I can understand that going around flying, I never got to do that yet, but just traveling in your car as some people went and said, it's a live action loading bar. I can understand that having those pre-scripted or random conversations as well that happen, like, getting out, sitting on the back of the car, the hood going up, the random, you could have ended up making it a little bit more half scripted of go to A, go to B, go to C, and have those scenarios built in between it, or just randomly come across it. Give that option.
Similar to what happens when you're taking Iris to Kayam.
Yeah,
she stops and says, "Hey, here's those the Malmalam thickets. Yeah, have you heard the legends? Yeah, we should go down there because there's probably a weapon."
And I think they could have done that a little bit better, or again, just offer that option. Do you want a free open experience, or do you want something a little bit more guided? Give that option for it. And I think
that option is, here's the main story, here's the world, and you as the person have to make the decision.
Yeah,
This happens with every open world game that exists. I have this problem with all the Elder Scrolls games. I have this problem with The Witcher. Any game that says, here is a story, but here's everything else, and you get to choose. I'm like, all right,
like,
I'm going to
go
do
away,
the
story.
Yeah, I'm going to do the story. This side quest over here. Okay, as soon as I'm done with this side quest, I'm going to go do
you're
the
like, all right,
other side
even
quest.
when you're like, okay, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to focus on the story. I'm riding my horse towards it. You're like, ooh, hey, this guy over here has a side quest. What's up, man? I mean, I'm riding by you right now. I don't want to have to come back here later. So talk to you right now.
And that's like it was with the hunts, where it's like, all right, well, I've got 5 hunts here. One of them's 20 levels above me, but I don't want to come back and do it later, so I'll do it now.
That's where a lot of my money has gone, in buying stuff in shops, because I'm like, well, I'm going to want to collect this at some point, so I might as well spend 20,000 gil on something while I'm here.
But man,
I
just
did a lot of that.
Chapter 9 story. It made me so happy.
What was Vivian Westwood doing in this fucking game, man?
I was seriously going into Chapter 9. I was sitting possibly like at a 3 out of like 10 for happiness at that point. And I was just, I got in there. Everything started happening. It was building up. There was information. You got to see people interacting. You got to see stuff. You got to see new characters. It felt like it mattered. You had the political stuff. I hate politics. That was probably one of my favorite scenarios in the whole game. And all of a sudden, it's like, let's do this fight. Everyone has a goal. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Sadly, I wish there was a little bit more micromanaging over hoping. Like, actually, did in the chats, did anyone actually get different scenarios that of outcomes out of like what you had to do when you're debating? Like, because I had to protect the people and kill Leviathan were like the 2 things that I had. I don't know if there was anything else that you could end up forcing in the conversation. I'd like to see a map of the vocal or the choices for it and what it could end up going out to be.
It probably is the same result on everything, except you either get less of a reward at the end, like you get 500 experience, woo, and then you might even lose stuff. Because if you pick the wrong option, in other scenarios, that's what happens. When you first arrive in Alticia, if you have Sid try to talk to the guy.
Here.
Yeah, this is the one time I did the wrong option, because I was like, it's been up almost every other time, but I'm going to try the bottom one this time. And it cost me 3,000 gil. And I'm like, what the? No, that's not cool.
Actually, I don't know if I had Drive the Empire out during mine. I could be wrong, though. I think it was just defeat Leviathan and protect people, but I don't think I had Drive Empire out in mine. Anyway, I like that. And then just the whole fight. Granted, and at this point, I still didn't know that you could hold down your attack button. And I was just slamming the button. And the whole fight, the whole Leviathan fight for me actually felt like it was a little responsive, but I couldn't die. I understood that I couldn't die. But I did feel the fight was a little bit prolonged.
That was my only complaint about that whole sequence. It's like, the fight is supposed to be easy. That's fine. I don't mind them giving me my full godly king
More
power.
importantly, it's a set piece.
Yeah, it's to show you, like, look at how much of a badass you are if you have all of your powers. You can just slay gods and slice them up the middle, which was really cool. It's just that it went on and on and on. The fight was probably 5 minutes too long, maybe 10.
No, I don't. Well, it wasn't that long for me, but I felt that was the kick your ass. You're going into story mode sequence. That was probably a much better sequence even than probably majority of the final fight areas. Like, that was the part of the game for me that was.
Well, because it's all of this stuff coming to this giant head. It's all of a sudden the story is really moving along. You know things are going on because Arden shows up and he finally starts to play his hand and he stabs your fiance in the gut.
Yeah. It just sucks that they couldn't end up keeping that up or even start introducing that and ending with it. It just felt like it was the peak and then, like, I guess the climax of the story to a peaceful ending. I don't know. Very novel-like. Whereas with most JRPGs, you have a lot of peaks throughout the story.
That was a good peak. But that era state, though, come on, that was a peak. That was if that wasn't a peak of the story, something else was peaking right there.
Iris is pretty waifu status. She's way up there. Plus, did you guys use her technique for the time that she was in the party?
Yeah. The fucking Moogle. Well, how come she gets a pink? She's like, you can ride these birds? Hey, I have a pink chocobo. What the?
Okay, really off question. What did you name your chocobo?
I named it Zarian after my
I
latest
forgot. Could I name it? I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
You
remember.
could, did you ever change the color?
No.
Green man.
Okay,
Green.
yeah. If you
I'm
talk
fucking
to,
colorblind. The last thing I'm gonna do is change
well,
things color.
I mean, did you even look at that menu?
No.
Okay, yeah. One of the
Oh.
people at the town where you get the behemoth hunt mission from, where you first unlock chocobos, one of the people there is there so that you can customize your chocobos.
Yeah, I'm colorblind. I didn't touch that shit.
Yeah, you can rename and you can equip the medals that you've won from the chocobo races,
Yeah.
and you can change their colors.
I had to name my chocobo after my favorite Final Fantasy waifu, which would ended up being Chocolina. I was so happy to see Chocolina in World of Final Fantasy, man. I was so happy.
Where is the mute attendee button?
Anyway. So story, anything else?
No, I was happy with the story in the end. After all the Final Fantasies we played over the last few months, it was a little refreshing to not have to keep track of all these. I didn't feel like I ever had to keep track of too many things at once to know what was going on. And I understood everything, and when it all was said and done, I had no questions. The only question, I had no questions about the conclusion. My only question out overall was, why did they do this scene with the Empire? And I would like to know more about certain characters at some point.
Here, this is my full list of what the hell. The Prompto thing was thrown in with no explanation, just to avoid for spoilers for
MT
people.
thing.
We spoiled so much. Are you kidding? Come on.
I know. It's just in case people are here now. Gladios, the MIA with Scar. What happened with Ravis? Why did he all of a sudden show up at the Empire? The whole Empire thing, just like what the hell with the Emperor? Like, okay, whatever.
I thought it was really cool getting there and finding out more and more about the Scourge. I liked that part of chapter 13, and like I liked when you got up to the Emperor's throne room. This is why this came up, because you mentioned the Emperor, and like you couldn't get into the room, but you could see in there, and you could see his clothes on the throne. I was like, whoa. This is actually, the people did literally start vanishing and stuff out of their clothes. That's crazy.
The night darkness randomly showing up after small chatter in the game, and all of a sudden just night darkness. It's here for life now.
People in my chat were like, "Oh, is it just eternal dark now?" And I was like, "No, I think they're still saying that it's building up to that." And it was like, "No,
it's dark now."
Well, they were saying it's building up, and then in that chapter, several weeks later, because that's the thing. It wasn't.
Well, was it set? Was there a time skip there?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there was, and it sucks that we don't get to see or hear or nothing in that several.
No
weeks.
reactions to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just happens. And then the ring. There's no info about it. That's all. Like, those are my pain points for the story. I wish that we got to know more information about that. It just was kind of thrown at us, and we don't get to know anything.
I would have liked the scene where Noctis does the same thing that like Nyx does, where he's in the ring and everything stops, and the old wall is talking to him, and he actually communes with them. But the reason that happens is because he doesn't have the blood of Lucis in him, so he actually has to appeal to them.
Yeah.
One thing that actually I was corrected on after talking about it was so when Noctis loses his power because the generator, which was I really liked that actually, like that whole talking about that the generator happened and that the Empire was making this technology. It did feel a little shoehorned in, but at the same time it was nice because I didn't realize that since all my comrades, I was giving them my power to go and hide weapons, they couldn't summon their weapons either throughout that whole sequence as well too. So I didn't know that until later when we were inspecting. It's like, oh shit, they are hiding their weapons too. So it makes more sense now that Arden comes and helps them through the sequence. So I was always wondering, well, like, what did he need help with? So little stuff like that too.
Fuck you, Arden.
The world felt empty, non-existent in the terror attack on Insomnia. Like, there was no talking about it outside in the open world area with Insomnia being fully attacked, the king being killed. No one cared in the main areas at all. And then the characters had no urgency to what was happening in the story.
Yeah. The lack of urgency for almost everything is probably the game.
Until chapter 9, where they say, well, this is urgent. Feel like we're
yeah, but I mean, there's a bunch of stuff happening there, and then after that, it goes back to everybody just kind of being like, well, this happened. Let's
This
go
is the,
get
this
the
is the hand
crystal.
we were dealt. We
I
have
guess.
nothing. We can't do anything.
Yeah.
They don't even react. They don't talk about it at all. Just nothing. It's like, oh, the Empire's done. Okay. It's nighttime all the time now. Okay.
Is this an FF7 beta? Ha ha.
Well, I mean, the heroine did get stabbed.
Copy paste. New game. So anyway, I'm done for story though. Sorry.
Well, there isn't really much more to go over because I mean everything that we wanted that we would have otherwise discussed, where it's the progression and party members, we've kind of touched on all that as we've gone through talking about the story.
Okay. How about this then? The music.
So good. The clean battle theme is one of my favorite battle themes now.
So I actually did a little
different encounter.
I had to do a little bit of research on this too. Yoko Shimura. Yes. She did Super Mario RPG, a few of the Mana games, a few of the Mario and Luigi games as well too, including the majority of the Kingdom Hearts games, and even a few tracks for Smash Brothers. So it was actually kind of cool going and looking at her whole repertoire. Like she's probably becoming like I didn't know. Like I want to go back and listen to all of her music now, especially some stuff. She had one from Final Fight, one of her first things all the way back then. So definitely something I want to be looking into, and I want to go see some of it. Later Mana games, some of the later Mana games, not the original ones.
So the only complaint I'll accept about the music, because if you say 15's OST sucks, I don't like you as a person anymore.
You're literally wrong. You have a wrong opinion.
Is that the soundtrack at many points is kind of shut out by the fact that in your car you're never listening to it.
Oh yeah, I said there's some odd parts where it felt out of place or non-existent.
You know what was great? I forgot I was listening to One Winged Angel in the car, and then the next scene started in the car, and it starts with One Winged Angel, and like it's that was like going from the halfway point of chapter 1 when you're going back to Insomnia to like before you get the phone call from Core. It was like as soon as that sequence started, it was like dun 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 dun.
There was a few times for me like when it would have the chapter name up on the black
and then
screen,
the music from the car starts
and then
playing.
the music from the car was going, and I was like, "This is great."
I wish that they made it so then when you got out of the car, the MP3 player still kicks in with that whatever you
Immediately picked up where it left off in the car. That
like,
bothered me, and then not being able to have whatever music you wanted during the fight. During any
even
battles.
with the MP3 player, it replaces it. You can bug the game out to let you use the MP3 player in combat, but after 2 or 3 fights, the battle music breaks until you get a summoner restart the game.
That's weird. Yeah, I didn't see that. Like I had like the only time like when you're running Chocobo, MP3 player doesn't work either. So you end up having to
The Chocobo has 3 different themes though, which is interesting. It has one for swimming, one for running, and one for idle.
Yeah.
And
that
I
was
didn't
really
know
cool.
you could swim with
like
the
that.
Chocobo until very late in the game. It
It's
only
like
serves
you
very
can
little
swim-
purpose.
You can swim in the lakes, but you can't swim in the big running current.
Right. That's
river.
what confused me, because I was like, oh, I guess I can't swim. And then I went to the Vesper pool, and I was like...
But I thought what?
Yeah.
I did it the other way. I swam first, and then I went to a river, and it wouldn't let me in, and I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, that was me
Okay.
too.
Let
I
me
was
jump
that
over
way.
the river, at least.
Yeah. Please,
It
God.
got to some areas so annoying trying to navigate. Art and tech, the whole game just looked beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like we need, like, some of the environments were saved for the story a little bit too much. Like, for example, the snowy mountains,
I wish there was some more of that.
Yeah, the snowy mountains and the Empire itself is pretty much relegated to a bunch of, like, just the
A highway and a tower.
I wish we...
They're equivalent of the Citadel, basically.
Yeah. If we got to see more of the Empire during the day, I would have been so happy. Because, like, that equivalent to me was, like, that was going to be the victor of the game. You know, you're going into the Empire, and you're going to be attacking it. Too bad the whole Chapter 13 didn't feel like Magitek Factory in any way whatsoever. It felt like...
It felt more like the stairway at Midgard.
It felt like...
Do you mean the one at the Shinra Core? Oh, God.
It felt like generic... Factory 2.1. Like it's just like
it felt like something out of a survival horror game.
It did when they jumped at your fucking legs.
It felt
that jump scared me one time. Then after that, I was like, nope, I'm focusing now. If there's a guy on the ground, I'm gonna keep my eyes on him until I'm well.
And then for like 20 minutes, it doesn't happen, and then it happens again.
Yeah, the first time it did, I was like, oh, okay, so I got to watch out for that. And then it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Tech pulled off one of the best-looking open-world games. You can go pretty much almost everywhere you see, minus cut-off areas that were for...
Man, those boxes are way taller than they look, dude. As are those railings along the side of the highways.
Yes, cars, too, when you're on the chocobo trying to...
Jump over
trying
a
to go
car.
into it. Yeah.
Jump over it and you're like,
So you know what was great? In the opening sequence, I pushed the car into the other lane, and a car drove right at me and hit me. And then I was pushing against it for 15 seconds, and then it backed up and went around. That opening sequence with Stand By Me completely ruined.
Oh, yeah, you made it. Yeah, you like, oh, I had the car despawn on me. I just ran into it, and I kept pushing it, and it just despawned, and I could keep going.
Mine backed up and went around me. It was
So, one of my favorite pieces of tech in this entire game, and I discovered this when I was doing the escort quest with Iris, when you first get to that one place when she's like, let's go for a small date and walk around and talk and stuff. Stairs. How many of you guys noticed that stairs were real stairs and not ramps?
I did.
I didn't, yeah.
So amazing.
What a concept.
I know. Seeing actual motion of body joints actually stepping on stairs. I sat there and
To be
admired.
fair, when you're jumping through the town, it doesn't have as much impact.
It is true.
You're just like, "Huh, huh," because the jumping in this game automatically propels you to sprint speeds, so it's as fast as sprinting, and there's never a chance of running out of stamina. If you sprint and jump at the same time, you basically don't run out of stamina either.
Well, Silent Ninja does bring up a good point, though. With some of the music, it did feel repetitive in some aspects.
That's Final Fantasy, dude.
But that is Final Fantasy.
I can
yeah.
never use the word repetitive in any turn-based RPG. You know what's repetitive? Fucking me sitting in this one spot and hearing that's repetitive.
So I give you guys a question. Was open world, for the sake of open world, to grab a new market, because the JRPG market is very very niche? Do you think that it was forced, or do you think that it was they actually want to propel and reinvent that aspect of?
I think it's something that they wanted to do, and it fit with the idea of the story. With the previous kings, we hear about them going on these big epic journeys. They're going around the countryside fighting all these monsters, and the open world is supposed to emulate that kind of thing. For Noctis and his crew, it's them going around and saving the people, like the kings of old.
I think well, I don't think it was forced. I think it was the decision they made. I don't think that they needed to do it for this game to come together.
Yeah.
I think that they were like, you know what? Every Final Fantasy has a world map. For old school Final Fantasy have a world map. So we can't really do just a world map, because it's going to seem disconnected if you have this, the big model running through the world map, and then you zone into an area, and it's not seamless or whatever. So what do? We'll do an open world. That's our solution to emulating the world map to play a little bit at nostalgia. And on top of that, open world games are a little bit more popular nowadays. The idea of being able to go anywhere and do all these other objectives and do some world building. It sells games. We saw it with The Witcher 3. We saw it with Skyrim. So we'll do something like that within our limitations. We're not just going to create areas for the sake of creating areas. We want everything to feel organic in our world, but it's going to be open, and that's the way that we want it. And even then, it's not really open until you get to Chapter 3, which is called the open world. So
this is actually funny. A little tidbit of information. I was doing a little bit of research about development in the game. So during that first 4 or 5 years of Versus development, before it was finally switched over to Tabata, and this might have been the breaking point. We don't know, but supposedly, Versus was almost turned into a musical, and Square Enix uppers ended up saying, "Yeah, no,
Oh man,
we're not going to do that."
But I want to be your canary.
Intentions to turn the game into a musical after Nomura had seen the 2012 film adaptation of Les Miserables were vetoed out by higher ups.
Les Miserables. You want to say that again?
Les Miserables.
I'm terrible. Ignore me. Just black screen me.
You are the most American Canadian I've ever known.
I'm terrible.
No, Americans
Ignore
get that
me.
right, and Canadians don't. And Canada has Quebec, so I don't understand.
It's so weird.
It's not like he lives in Quebec.
I should have just not even said it. I should have just not even said it. I butchered it.
He's the most American Canadian. That's so funny.
Anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It was funny reading that. It was funny reading that and reading some of the articles about it.
It's funny listening to it too.
God, I hate you. Damn.
God, yeah, I'm glad that musical thing fell through.
And so they just gave us the OST instead and said no musical.
Well, I think one of the things I really want to do with 15, something that we've been talking about throughout this,
a mobile
this
MMO, perfect. They're already working on it.
No, I think we need to compare a lot of the aspects of it to some of the older games. Combat, I think we've touched on very heavily so far.
Yeah, I don't know.
Combat was it's kind of like the main drawing factor, like us talking about going from turn-based from 1 to 3 to ATB to. As
the combat evolved throughout the series, but I also feel like there's a lot of other ways the game has changed. Well, I guess sort of story-wise, this is some of the best. I meant to talk about this for Chapter 9. This is some of the best voice acting I've ever heard.
I was going to say that. Arden's voice actor, give that man a medal.
Arden, there was a few times his voice was a little, that just felt like a strange delivery of that line.
I know.
The rest of the time, though, he nailed it.
Ray Chase as Noctis. Give that man a medal.
Noctis killed it. Chapter 9 with him crying after Luna's death, and the animation on the face even was very, very well done. I thought that they nailed it. I cannot believe how great of a job that they did with that emotion and stuff. And then the post-credits scene.
Matt Mercer is core, even though we don't get to see him for very long. Matt Mercer is core. Luna's voice actress also did a phenomenal job for the times we do get to see her. Of the other 3 companions, I believe Prompto, I would probably say, otherwise had my favorite voice acting. Ignis was my least favorite because it just sounded like generic half-British guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to know so much more about Prompto, man. One of the cooler characters in the whole game.
Plumpto.
What did I say?
Plumpto.
I said Plumpto. Because in Motherhood Episode 2, everyone calls him Plumpto.
Versus 13 and 15 are 2 different games. Just
although you can see that basically, if I wanted to, I could have just bullshitted this story and put in the words Lassie and Falsey in a bunch of places, and it probably would have made sense.
Honestly, the more that I was watching the story, I'm like, that's that. You know what? You should have just left it in
When
there.
he shows the mark on us, he's a Lassie, man. Come on. Instead of the MTs are all Lassies. There you go.
I would have. I don't know. They should have just kept it in. They should have just did it.
And then the MTs that become full on demons are the Seath. I'm making it make sense.
Well, no, it does, because you can even see Arden as the crystal ended up abandoning him, left him as a rogue Lassie.
There you go. See,
it could have been. I'm not joking. It could have been.
Oh, Prompto's so sad. And then I like Gladio's voice actor too, just because he's easy to imitate and he's got some great one-liners. Stop billing. Stop bitching. Start killing. The Prince of Pain.
The Prince of Pain.
Oh my god.
I just wished it was more fleshed out. I wish that story was more.
I really liked the post-credit scene that they did as well. I thought Noctis did a fantastic job there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the mouth movements, the clenching teeth and all that, and his reaction, because they didn't update the animations, which I think we should also talk about. They didn't change the mouth movements to match up with the English VAs throughout any part of the game. So I thought that was interesting. And in that scene, he did a really good job of reacting to the animation of him and really brought that out.
It's so hot out. Then lose the jacket.
The way he says cannot tell you how many times I had
the way he says lose the jacket, then lose the jacket. He's mouth breathing when he's saying it. Then lose the jacket.
That's why you just make sure that you always have the jacket off. for your equipment.
All right, well, you heard Morag, guys. When in doubt, just jack it off. Oh, no wonder you lose health when you. No wonder you lose health. All right, there you go.
Actually, this was actually kind of funny when we were talking about when I was trying, like day 2, when I was trying to figure out a lot more of like the pacing of development and whatnot. I had an idea, and I know it's completely false now, that Type O, 13, 14, 15 characters, I forget how many it is, with unique gameplay elements was maybe a slight.
All right, let me talk about Type Zero's unique elements.
Come on, they are all of them. Each character.
Oh, they are incredibly unique for the one attack that you use on all of them.
I'm just meaning like how you end up playing them. That's the big thing. Each of them did have a slight different play style for them. Speed of weapon, whatnot, different combos to do different stuff. And to try and master all of them by the end of the game was a very interesting feat. Overall, but for a while I was thinking, it's like, well, shit, like if Nomura was trying to go and make his versus 13 and Tabata was doing his Type O, because Nomura did help out a little bit with Type O as well too, that I'm wondering if they ended up making all these different styles of action based, and they're just like, well, we really like this one, and these ones go make another game with, because they've been trying to push this more action oriented gameplay as of late. And it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with 7. I want to know what they're going to do with 7, because if anything, what 13's combat did for 13-2, I cannot wait to see 7's after 15.
But what about 15-2? We got to get that first.
They already
starring Iris, Aranea, Luna, and
the all-female cast.
Yeah.
It would be Iris, Luna, Aranea, and Cindy.
Cindy. Typo was one of those games.
Yeah.
Typo was one of those games that was really hard to get into, but by the end of the game, I was like, I hate this game, but it's not terrible, but I hate it.
I couldn't get into Type Zero just because it gave me such a bad initial impression, because it's the only game I've ever played that I got motion sick playing. The only game in my entire life I've ever, other than a VR game in space.
Yeah. Go back and play it again, because they removed all.
I did, and it was still a problem.
Oh, it's still a problem for you?
It's still a problem, and it's still not fun to me. The game itself just wasn't fun.
Unfortunate. I know, Anyway, I could talk about that for a while too.
Yeah. There was one other thing I want. Oh, so one thing I want to specifically applaud. The eight sealed dungeons. Dungeon design is bland. At best.
I was told it's just copy paste, wasn't it?
It's copy paste.
Yeah.
But the unique dungeons, the actual Castlemark Tower, the Pitios Ruins, the Crestholm channels, those are all incredibly well designed, and kudos to whatever level designer made those. Especially the fuckface that made the Pitios Ruins. He did an amazing job. Put that man on the next Prince of Persia or something, because that man has a very long career ahead of him.
The one that's right next to Insomnia, we had to turn on the 4 generators. I want to say screw you.
That would be the Crestholm channels.
You didn't let me get out of combat from the final boss, and I died. And my last save.
Oh, so before either of you gentlemen fly your car, I warn you, please save every time before you fly the car.
Yeah, someone in my chat said that the only time they got a game over was when they were flying. I was like,
I've seen this happen. The Pitios Ruins is one of the most taxing mental dungeons in your life. If you do not save after you complete it, because you can only reach it with the flying car, you can only leave it via the flying car, unless you return to rest point, which I would honestly recommend just to avoid the problem. If you do that dungeon, you get the reward at the end, and you fucking die before saving, guess where you're going back? Don't finish a dungeon and then get in your car and start flying. Fucking save your game, for the love of God.
So I gotta know, how can you die while flying your car?
You hit the car on a lamppost, on a rock. You fail to land it. You know those giant arches? I hit one and dead.
You know what's funny is that there was one piece of information that was really weird. They brought in another company to help with airship mechanics.
Shut up.
This makes it even more laughable that they had to bring in another company to work on making your car be a suicide vessel. That's amazing.
I tried to land. I pressed the land button, but my landing gears weren't all the way in, and I just hit the ground. And I'm on the ground, and my car has landed, but it's already on fire, so it's game over.
Oh, auto mode crashed me and destroyed my car. And at that point, I'm just like, I don't care. I'm not even going to repair my car. Yeah. So for the first 2 days of streaming, my car was trashed. Like, why don't you fix it? I'm like, I
never fixed my car for the first like 3 days. It was a piece of shit the whole time.
I don't care. And then it gets auto fixed.
How did you guys crash your cars?
So no, okay. Auto did.
I mean, I didn't have any problems.
So I had one where I was trying to make a U-turn. And so I turned right, and then I turned left immediately, and the car just doesn't have enough control to do that. So if you try to use, like, this is without pressing the square button. This is like a manual U-turn. So it's like, imagine I'm at a three-way cross, and I'm trying to use the cross to like dip in and turn around. I dipped in, and then I held left, and it just drove straight into the fucking railing. And then I was just like, yeah.
Car driving is the hardest part of the game.
And it's on rails.
Car flying is the hardest in the game. Oh my god, that GIF. Oh, that's so sad.
I thought the Leo one.
Yeah. Or they fly up and they hit a lamppost when they're.
If you hit a lamppost, it will be instant game over.
That's enough. So stupid.
I hope they fix that. That's dumb. That's so dumb.
It's so funny though.
That's so dumb.
And the landing strip to get to the Pitios dungeons is in the middle of a bunch of mountains, so it's very short.
You got Solgren to design the 2-hour jumping puzzle in the final dungeon.
Oh my god, it's so funny. I just want to make a video of all the funny crashes I have in that thing. Like, I just want to make one video of like all the different ways to crash your car.
Like the one time that I ended up crashing, which it was on auto. It ended up. The crash was so bad, and the AI didn't know what to do. It had to reset, and it placed me somewhere else.
I've had that. I've had that happen a few times where you hit a wall and nothing happens, and then it just puts. It's almost like you're playing like the old school like Rush on the N64, and you press the square button
out of bounds,
and it drops you into the middle of the road with like a new car almost.
Yeah. Oh man, San Francisco Rush, all those hidden areas.
Yeah, that was a good game. That was a good game. Oh man. There's a lot of funny things that happen with the car, thankfully. It's funny. Now I'm just looking through the GIFs of the person, because there's a lot of them here that aren't, like, car-related. There's one where Noctis kicks an enemy in the face, and he jumps up 2,000 feet into the air.
I saw one where it was a triple stack of all your party members.
Yeah, and their chocobos.
Yeah. Oh, no, I just saw them standing on top of each other, like warping up and down.
I've seen one of Gladio standing on his chocobo to ride it, doing the wave.
I've seen that one.
Did you guys end up seeing what picture I chose for my final credits?
No, I only saw his picture.
So I'm gonna get the tweet here for it.
Okay.
But
did you bring Cindy with you?
I thought about it.
I know you did.
I ended up getting a picture where Gladios was face down. In chapter 10, face down in the water, getting his ass kicked, and it was the best ever. I'll throw it here in the chats.
It's nothing compared to Cup Noodle 15, though.
And then Noctis hiding in the back, just killing some of the monsters.
Yeah,
it was so good. Very lolsy for the final scene.
I just like the idea of you handing that to Luna. Imagine if you handed her a picture like that, and instead of it being like the scene it normally is, she just burst out laughing.
Oh, that was awesome, because like they're handed the scene, they're all smiling at it. I'm just like, perfect.
They're like, yeah.
But it was actually kind of funny. I didn't save a single photo that had everyone in it. All of mine were just like. All of mine were just like the weirdest photos around. The weirdest photos. And for some strange reason, Prompto has this need to take a picture of Nox's ass when he's getting on or off a chocobo.
How weird is that? Every time he gets his foot over, and just before he sits down, he's like, got it again.
One of the first pictures he got for me was a picture of the Bloodhorn at the very beginning of the game. He just took a picture of its ass. That's all it was. He just a giant butt crack on the screen. That's all it was. Oh man. Yeah,
Save the Regalia one. Yeah, I've got the early game one of the Regalia.
Oh man.
I almost used the picture very early on that you get that Cindy takes for you of the 4 of you around the regalia.
I almost took that one. I ended up taking one of the photo op ones.
I used the one right before Chapter 9, right before everything goes crazy.
I think that's what you were supposed to take with you.
Supposed to.
Somebody complained that I spoiled the game because I showed everyone was alive with the certificate of completion. I was like, I can't even explain it to you without pissing you off.
Without spoiling, so shut up and go away.
I was just like, it's a picture you pick at the end of the game. It has no relevance to the story itself. And then it's like, so they're not alive, is what you're telling me. And it's like, I will fucking knock you in the face.
You spoiled yourself, man.
I will knock you.
I could tell you there's an astral realm and there's a human realm, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like, there was no proper way to respond to that other than to just flat out say, you get to
other than you're assuming too much.
Yeah. You get to take a picture at the end of the game and use it for your certificate. That's the closest thing I could get. And I was like, well, thanks for telling me that was going to happen. It's like, I will...
So do you feel that Final Fantasy 15 after 10 years?
I still don't look at it as 10 years.
You see it as 6 or 4 or whatever it was?
The 3 that it was in active development. Active development. After they had gone back and scrapped whatever it is they weren't going to use, and the company was no longer fucking failing because Realm Reborn had to relaunch successfully, and they didn't have... Like, they were out of the hole that they dug. They weren't they were actually talking about Kingdom Hearts 3 finally, and it's still not out, so I don't know what the fuck's going on there.
It'll never come.
The last 3 years.
But I'm not saying, like, I'm talking about Square Enix in general. Like, the last 10 years for them has been a little
bad.
Rough. A couple of years of roughness for their RPG aspect, their main in-house stuff. Do you think that they're finally climbing out of that hole of Final Fantasy IV?
I think they've started to over the last
Crystallis
5 or so years.
Yeah, I'd say since they a few games in particular have really given them sort of, they've become revitalized because of them. I think Square Enix as a publisher is got so many great games under their belt that are westernized that it gives the company leeway to focus on what they were good at in the first place, and that's RPGs.
Especially like Just Cause was a really fun game. Actually, you know what? I really enjoyed that as an open world game. I completely forgot about that. And even Nier Automata coming up as well too. Looks phenomenal. I am looking forward to that.
Some of the games in the Square Enix Collective are very, very good. If you haven't ever looked at those, Tomb Raider is published under Square Enix now. Deus Ex, which got amazing scores. It was like a 9.0 game, and I got to play it, and it definitely deserved it. That is another game that they publish. Hitman sees the game. There's finally, like, all of the chapters are out, so that game culminated into something quite successful. They've got so many Western games as a publisher under their belt that I think the whole idea of them digging themselves out as like a company is over. I think they will have plenty of great games published under them that, no matter what, keeps them as a company effectively. I think as developers, I think 15 and I think A Realm Reborn and I think a lot of the things they're working on, the successful mobile games they've worked on that are raking in fucking so, a lot of them they didn't even work on. They just outsourced the details. Said, we're making money. You're using our shit. We're making money off you. At this point.
Like they're publishing a lot. They're not creating a lot of them. Like they have Eidos, I know, is doing a bunch too.
Yeah.
And especially the Collective too, which is their way to try and get other indie companies, and they're publishing their stuff too.
Yeah. I think as developers, I think with A Realm Reborn, I think with 15, I think with what we've seen of Kingdom Hearts 3 and where it's kind of going right now, I think that Square Enix is in a perfectly fine place.
Cool. Like I know, like with the whole Unreveal, like the Final Fantasy 15 Unleashed that they ended up doing back in March, I think that for me was like the shotgun start, where they're in a good way, where they're like, we're going, like we're out, like this marks the moment where we're back. Let's do this.
So talking about them being back, Final Fantasy 15 is, because it's been, and don't get me wrong, this is because A, marketing, B, being released worldwide, it is the fastest selling Final Fantasy game of all time.
5 million day one?
No, now let's be clear. This is 5 million shipped. I like to be very specific.
Yes.
This is 5 million shipped, which means that there may be units that are shipped that are not sold, but that measured at the odds of that, This measure does include digital purchases.
Okay, I was gonna ask.
So those are guaranteed purchases, obviously. Yeah. And we know that at least 100 and something thousand of them came from the United Kingdoms alone. It was the second fastest selling game of all time, second fastest Final Fantasy of all time in the UK. The first being Final Fantasy 13. Yeah.
A lot of people. It was funny because like I remember I had this conversation in chat where people are like, "Yeah, FF13 didn't sell well." I'm like, "You
are wrong."
No, it sold
did
very
not sell
well.
Lightning Returns barely sold 800,000.
And you know what's funny is like during the whole FFCountUp, FF13 was actually one of my more popular streams
because people love to come and like hate it.
See a train wreck.
No, that wasn't it. It was a very positive stream the entire time. It was interesting. That it has this blanket hate, and it was even popping up. Chapter 13, they just call it like FF13. Like, you of all people call it the homage to FF13.
It's a hallway. It draws on way too long. I'm not interested in anything.
E-slap. I hate you.
It's undeniable.
It's not. Yeah. Anyway. Especially with new upcoming stuff too. They have Nier Automata coming up. Kingdom Hearts 2.8.
And World of Final Fantasy.
Oh my God. Okay, for anyone that didn't like 15, or is like 15 didn't satisfy your JRPG need, go play World of Final Fantasy right now. Just go play.
And whenever Square Enix doesn't know what else to do to release a game, they're like, fuck it, we'll just remake another old one. What else do we got on the list that hasn't been put on Steam yet?
Oh man. Just go play World of Final Fantasy. It's possibly game of the year for me at this point. It's so good.
I got platinums in both. So I've got 100 hours approximately in both games. So my year has been Final Fantasy.
I would rather at this point see a World of Final Fantasy 2 than a 15 2.
But we don't need a 15 2. We're getting the MMO.
We're getting the MMO.
MMO. My bad.
What else is coming out? The 1.5 and the 2.5 for PS4.
That's in
Did
March.
they release? Is that going to also be? Man, March has so much coming out.
So okay, let me go over this. So we have 2.8 in January. You have 12 remaster in Q1. I believe the current estimated date is February. You have Persona 5, which got pushed back to April. You have Horizon Zero Dawn, which is not Square Enix, but it has RPG elements. That's February. You also have there's something else that was supposed to come out in February. I can't remember what it is. You have Kingdom Hearts 1. You have the full Kingdom Hearts set remastered for PS4 in March. And
FF12?
And Nier Automata is March 3rd or March 7th or something.
FF12 is March, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure. I think FF12 we still only have Q1. I don't know that we ever got a date on that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a date.
And also Mass Effect Andromeda is another RPG element game that's due out early next year.
Granted, it still just looked like a really nicer version of Mass Effect 3.
You know what was funny? No, it looked like No Man's Sky. A good version of No Man's Sky is what it looked like. They were like, go to all different planets, talk to the wildlife, meet random hostile enemies, gather I saw them gather lithium, and I was like,
uh-oh.
No.
Hashtag triggered.
No more lithium, please. I can't do any more lithium.
Oh yeah, it's set for 2007.
And then P5 got
There's
pushed back
so
to April,
much stuff coming up next year.
I said P5 got pushed out of February. I forgot to re-mention it's in April. Maybe. And it's going to have dual audio now because it's in April.
Oh, and then I guess for people, I think the other big release is going to end up being Resident Evil 7, January.
Not an RPG, but still a big release. We'll see where that goes because I'm not.
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild.
Zelda.
Yeah, possibly rumored redo Xenoblade Chronicles X for the Switch. And again, I recommend playing it too.
I will be getting a Switch, so
yeah,
against my better intentions.
It's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna get it. I don't know if it's gonna do as well as the Wii U. We'll see.
What I want to do is I want to get a capture card installed on the handheld thing and then take it to fucking like a library and stream from the fucking library. Off the Wi-Fi or some shit.
God, I wonder how much capture cards are gonna cost for something like that. I should just be able to fucking plug it.
It screws Xenoblade Chronicles X because of the side quests. I have a newfound appreciation for it though, because of 15. It's been a year actually since that game has been out now, so it's I don't know. It's just something to take a look at. Horizon Zero Dawn.
Also, Tales of Berseria and Neil.
Yeah.
Neil,
Oh yeah, I need to
is
play
in
through
February.
still. But yeah.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah, Neil is in February, and
Nier is the one I'm looking forward to the most. Nier Automata, because I love Nier. Nier is one of my favorite games of all time.
Drakengard was always so weird for me, man. When the babies,
I haven't played them.
When the babies,
I'm going to before Nier Automata
it's
comes
just
out.
there's babies, man. Just they're fucking scary. I don't remember. Nier takes place either at the end of one. It's one.
It
of
takes
the
place
endings.
in a universe where you get the bad ending of either Drakengard 1 or Drakengard 2.
Yeah, I think it's Drakengard 2. I don't remember though.
I think so.
And also we have the Final Fantasy 14 expansion in early summer.
The expansion, who knows when the DLC is going to come out for 15.
We have 4 DLCs for Final Fantasy 15. Later this month we also have New Game Plus. We have the level cap mode. It's going to be busy.
Yeah.
But guys, we have to bring up something else that's very important about this. This is our last count-up cast. I don't know why. It's funny to me because it like has no bearing on us doing another count-up cast. Like we could literally just be like, so 12 Zodiac Edition just came out. We're just gonna do fucking
Yeah. Well, it's like
FF cast.
Are you guys going to be playing through the Kingdom Hearts?
Oh, Kingdom Hearts. I don't think
My
I am.
chat suggested. I didn't think Slack would be keen to the idea. Although we need this,
I've considered it a lot of times.
We need the Cynic. We do need the Cynic. Morag was the Cynic for this one, so we need the Cynic.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to be a cynic. I enjoy it.
Yeah, you love Kingdom Hearts. What did you think as a quick comparison between the combat systems of 15 to Kingdom Hearts?
Kingdom Hearts gives you a lot more open area, so the camera's not a problem.
And the big thing with and this is something actually where, and I know someone, I'm triggered by whoever you are, but I'm not letting you know it. They end up saying that I just don't know how to play video games. I don't know how to play video games. But I find that with Kingdom Hearts have found a really good job of finding ways to communicate that you're failing at playing the game and telling you in such a way that you just die. You will flat out die. And you can't really like kind of just push your way through that game. You have to learn how to play the game, which is 15 really didn't end up doing.
My chat.
Honestly, I want to go and play 15 again to find a way. How the hell I'm freaking up so much at hating the combat. Like I want to know why. But it's
just go to the Pitios ruins, go get the item that's at the end, and your life will be opened up.
Well, is that the
what item do you get at the end of that?
You get an item called the Black Hood. Do you want to know what the Black Hood does?
Yeah.
It automatically will dodge for you, so you do not need to hold the square button. All of the regular rules for invincibility frames still apply. If you're in the middle of an attack, it won't make you immune to it, but you never need to hold the square button.
Oh, that's actually nifty. Actually, for when
but you still have to for parrying.
No, for parrying, just press circle as the like. It
so it auto parries.
It's
too.
basically as if someone put a wrench on your square button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, that doesn't sound fun though. It just makes the combat even easier. For Kingdom Hearts, I found that the game was fun enough, and you end up learning enough in it that I set myself up with some really dumb challenges. Like really dumb challenges.
Man, let me tell you about Reflect in Kingdom Hearts. Let me tell you about Reflect. That's a great ability. Let me tell you about. Oh man, I'm gonna do this fight. I'm not gonna take any damage. Reflect. Reflect
is such a dumb ability in Kingdom Hearts, man.
Kingdom Hearts 2, at least.
Oh, like it's so broken, especially when you're doing like those final data fights too. Oh my god, you literally blow up one of them in like seconds if you know how to trigger it right. It's so dumb.
Take notes, Slack. Take notes. So before we wrap up our final count-up cast, although we may still do an FF cast in the future, since we're all fans of the series and will likely be following the series as we have with 15 as we move forward, what are your overall grades of the game?
I wrote this down. Even though I hate numbers, man, I hate numbers. I still.
Well, you might hate numbers, but Final Fantasy's full of them, so let's go.
Are we breaking it down by category or just for the game?
If you want to say overall this, but this for this part, this for that part, go right ahead.
I have 4 categories. Art and tech, because I kind of put it as together. 10 out of 10. Music, 9 out of 10. A story, 3 out of 10. And gameplay, 4 out of 10.
Jesus Christ.
Man.
Which comes out to a 6, or no, what was it, a 7? Just like it rounds up to 7, if I remember correctly.
Combat,
it could have been executed better.
I would say like combat probably 8 out of 10, somewhere around there. It has some flaws, but I still have a lot of fun with the combat for the most part. Story, again, probably like 8 out of 10. Music, 9.5 out of 10. Visuals, man, most of the art in the game was really good. Somewhere around like an 8.5, and I might have combat at like an 8.5 too. Overall, I want to give the game like a 9 out of 10. The experience as a whole came together to be something that I really enjoyed. I'm not sure if it beats out Final Fantasy XII IZGS as my top 3 Final Fantasies, but it's easily in my top half and probably in my top 4 or 5.
So I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth with that explanation right there. So combat for me was 9 out of 10. The only thing I didn't like was the occasional awkwardness of the camera. That's about the only and magic being a little too strong against me. We have art. For me, that's an easy 9 out of 10, only because I didn't feel like the environments were varied enough for me to give it the full 10 out of 10, or we didn't get to see enough of the varied environments for me to give it a 10 out of 10. Music, 9 out of 10, because I agree with the sentiment that that the car and the MP3 player kind of take away from what should be me listening to the OST of the game. It's great for me as a Final Fantasy fan, but I did feel like I wasn't even listening to Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack like half the time. And for me, that takes away from the experience a little bit. For the what's one I'm missing? For the story, 8 out of 10. I mean, it's up there in my Final Fantasy stories, because Final Fantasy stories for me have always just been full of loopholes and poor, either poor translations or just not great. Just lacks a real sense of camaraderie. Like, I'm on this mission with these people. It feels like for no fucking reason. Half the time.
Real emotion.
Yeah, there's very little real emotion there, and not the 10-2 real emotion. Anyway,
oh God, no!
I had to go there. And I love the camaraderie here. I would have liked to have seen more about the characters, but I said this earlier, I've said it a million times, there was no fat on the story. I knew exactly what I needed to know to get to the conclusion with no questions, only desires. And me wanting to see more is what the game should do. I should want to see more of the game, not because it's unexplained, but because I want it. I didn't need it explained, because at the end of the story doesn't change. You can tell me all you want about Aranea, doesn't make the end, doesn't change the result of the game at all. You can tell me more about Core, doesn't change the result, but I would like to know more.
If you want to call it that way, then is like, it's the difference between writing in the style of Harry Potter or Tolkien. Like,
dude, I don't read.
But I'm just saying, like, when you're trying to tell a story, do you want to actually have it built, or do you just want to end up just like purposely pleading ignorance and saying this is the way that the story is supposed to be?
If it's designed to be told to me in a certain way, if, like, for example, this from Noctis' point of view, it's what I feel, it's what is important to this end result. They can obviously rewrite it to make any character important to the story. It's a fucking story. That's the whole point. Anybody could literally.
They could make Iris the hero if
they wanted to. They could have fucking made Iris the queen of Lucis for all I fucking care. If they wanted to, no, she's the real one, and then it's like they could do whatever the fuck they want. It's their story. That's like with Final Fantasy 14. I always feel the same way. Like, I think this will happen. What do you think? It's like, I don't know. They could do whatever the fuck they want. It's their fucking game. You know what I mean? It's like, but they didn't. And now I want to know more about those characters, but they weren't integral to what ultimately becomes Noctis' journey. They were bystanders of his journey, in a sense. And
it was a very different execution of story than we see in a lot of other games. Can you think of some other games where it's specifically told by that character's point of view?
Only for short sections of the game, and I think almost every RPG has sections of a game that are only told from one perspective. Yeah. The difference is here, those are DLCs. Anyway. They gave us one complete story without being like, hey, you need to go. And I remember throughout CountUpcast, we complained about sequences that pulled away to the side characters, and it just felt like completely irrelevant. Like, we've complained about that in other ones. It's like, why did you need to tell me this? You know what? Why even fucking put me in that position in the first place?
That was only FF9 for me.
That was more than FF9 for us.
Here kind of does the this is the story as you know it thing. Have you guys played through the original Nier?
No.
I need to still.
Okay. Then I won't say anything about the spoilers or anything. Go for all endings and appreciate the way that the game is presented.
Oh, okay, Trixie said it right. Overall, the story's great, but I wish there was more to it. And it just feels like that there was stuff that was purposely chopped out, and you were supposed to just eat that portion. Like,
It's like a filet mignon, and what you get is really good, but you want some more of it, kind of a thing.
Right.
You're gonna go with the meat reference.
Yeah.
not a fishing fan.
And as
I've
my
heard
chat
of
is also
someone
bringing
else
up,
that-
if you read the newspapers, if you take the time to do the world building activity of actually paying attention to the world, a lot more information is given to you. One thing that's not even meant out is I think Prompto's dad was like a high general in the Imperial Army or some shit or something like that. Like before he was made into an MT. I can't remember exactly, but that information is there. But unless you find it, you're never gonna know that.
Yeah, that's weird.
But it doesn't matter because it didn't.
Because it's not integral to the story. It's about the character and the thing. Like, I like what they did with it, but at the same time, I want all that other information because I love FF6 because it tells you all of these things.
And that's
about
why
these
FF6 still sits at #1 for me. I've made that
Actually,
decision.
this is actually kind of funny. Is like one of my biggest arguments for the general,
Oh, there you go. Prompto is
game.
Versteel's clone.
Is who?
Versteel, exactly. One of the fucking generals from that scene with the Empire.
Oh, okay.
So his
So we'll
dad
probably-
is a high commander. There.
We'll probably find out about that maybe during his thing.
Yeah.
But whereas like someone told me, it's like where does a game where you feel that the side quests actually make a effort at expanding the story itself, like the end story. And I always go back to FF6 for that reason, because once you hit World of Ruin, you have a choice to get the characters or not back. Like you have a choice to do that versus or just go to it. You getting all the characters has a basis purely on the ending, the credits, everything, to go and actually see how they end up progressing afterwards. And that's probably one of the coolest scenarios in almost any RPG, that, the villain wins, you have to go and gather everyone back up to see them like kick his ass. You could, if you want to, go in with only 4 characters. Good luck.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a hell of a time getting through that dungeon. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, so there was a 9, 9, and an 8. In terms of things that pulled away from my experience, I will admit I got very few of the bugs. I've seen people complain about a number of bugs. I've had so few bugs in my game.
I've had one crash, and the only bug I've had is the artifacting on.
That's the artifacting, which I honestly just chalked up to being part of my abilities half the time. Like, I was like, oh, that's just an effect of the fucking ability.
Oh, it's just the way that the ability works, like to show that you're affecting the world around you, kind of thing. And I was like, whatever. The closest thing to another bug that I had, the game glitched. The hood went up on my car, and Noctis stood up through the at one point. He was just standing up, and he was like, "We should go over there." Sit down, man. It'll be okay.
What PS4 were you playing on, and what version if you're playing on Pro?
I'm not.
I was playing on light. I refused to play on high because I was afraid of just that problem.
Yeah. I just want to know if it was something that was Pro related or highlight or just PS3 or just regular PS4 related.
And then also the 60 FPS is with the holiday pack later this month. The option to unlock 60 FPS mode.
Is that just on the Pro?
Yeah. That's a Pro patch. That's the Pro patch. But
once, I honestly, I'm probably gonna play through 15 again once they patch it, DLCify it, and go through. Like I want to know what the complete experience is. I actually have a few people in my channel that will not buy games day one whatsoever. They'll watch me play it and whatnot, but they won't play it until
the Game of the Year edition
comes out.
Yeah. And
I don't blame them. I do not blame them, because they're getting the complete experience for their money. And I do not blame them for wanting to feel like they're being stringed along and just seeing the development of it. It's the same thing when you buy into a Kickstarter or an early access game. And I hate making that comparison, but that is literally what a lot of these AAA titles are now, is that they are just building up and slowly fixing stuff along the way. It sucks, but that's development cycles now.
That is. And there's deadlines and development cycles as well. Never forget that.
And I mean, to be fair, like fixing stuff along the way, we got games that were much buggier on Nintendo back in the day, on Nintendo and Super Nintendo.
I don't know what you're talking about. Nintendo.
Yeah, those were never bugged. Mega Man has no bugs.
And it's like things like Mega Man speed running. There are zip runs where you push yourself up into walls and you essentially teleport all the way across the screen.
Yep.
In Final Fantasy VI, Vanish Doom is something that would have been patched in today's video game world.
Final Fantasy VI, Realm.
Realm, sketch glitches. Evasion and magic evasion being bugged, so that magic evasion covers both stats and evasion does nothing. Blind not having any effect because of that.
Final Fantasy II, the game.
Oh no, with the 13 arms, you don't have to finish the game with them, which in my opinion, huge oversight. Huge oversight. They could have done something so nifty with that, and they just, again, it feels like that split. Whatever was done in the main world had no bearing on the ending. I agree that it was a mistake, but it didn't bother me as much. But it was a definite mistake. It just
doesn't make sense.
It reinforces for me that it was two separate, and it felt like it was two separate dev teams working on separate stuff. There's the scenario guys, and then there's the open world guys.
All right. Other things I have is a wish list. The ability to select favorite tracks for the MP3 players, so that I can only scroll through those instead of having to scroll or shuffle through everything else. MP3 player in combat, should I so desire it, and the ability to have quick keys for items. Hold R2 and then up, down, left, or right on the
Just wait for the PC version.
What?
Just wait for the PC version. You'll be okay. You'll have a whole set. You'll have 1 through 0 on that.
Also, in terms of the challenge of the game, if they are going to do any adjustments to that, I have the limitation of items allowed to be used in combat, or a cooldown similar to magic on item usage.
I agree. That is needed. Hands down. Spamming items is...
The no item dungeon is seriously, like, incredibly difficult because of that. Like, you immediately feel the effect of, you know why they were like...
You're playing a different game.
We know items were really good up till now, so fuck you.
I'd like to see a hard mode, too.
Well, I mean, if hard mode, that's what they could do for hard mode. I'd also like to see items that reduce the recast time of magic. Because the recast time of magic never gets shorter the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Something that could have also improved by equipping a certain arm, possibly.
The Scepter of the Pious.
Just having it on your bar. Lower
It gives you
recast
like 200
time.
magic, though. And the final thing, Noctis for Dissidia. Which, by the way, I believe next week is officially off of its 1-year exclusivity.
Yeah. I saw some information about it, actually, where I don't remember where it was. But, yeah, no, we're probably going to hear some stuff soon. I want that PS4 version.
I really want that.
Wait, of what?
I'll go hard on that.
What was that? I missed it.
Dissidia. I really want the new
yeah,
Dissidia to get over here.
Give it. Yeah, I'd like to see Noctis for Dissidia. Especially with Amagur being his super.
And then you can make it the final sequence where he knocks out Arden, where you press circle 13 times. And you're good to go. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good. Gameplay. All right. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the final CountUp cast is over.
It was only 3.5 hours!
Only 3.5 hours? Dude, I
Only, yeah, not bad. Not bad. Hell, we could have talked about a lot more stuff, too.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of things we
could have nitpicked. We could have sat here, played the game, and be like, that's bullshit, that's good, I like that. Why couldn't they change that? That's cool.
Could have compared, like, the hunts, Final Fantasy 12. I feel like it did open world stuff way better than 12. Thanks to the characters talking.
Final Fantasy 12.
Oh, I hope that they improve loading times. 30 seconds, man.
Those are rough, man.
I grew up in the PlayStation 1 era. Bitches can't touch me. All right? You can't harm me with loading screens after the PlayStation 1 era.
If this game, if the game ends up with all DLC becoming extremely more fun, I will go out and get an SSD or hybrid, whatever's better at this point, just to have faster load times. I'm waiting for reports to come out if it helps it or not. I want to know.
You also need 7,200 RPM because 5,400 RPM is standard for the Pro. Or for the PlayStation 4 in general, it's 5,400.
Son of a bitch.
RPM. So,
I would definitely want to swap out hard drives because if I can bring that down to 15 seconds just because of a hard drive, I'll do it. I'll do it, man. I'll do it right then and there. I'll do it.
Alrighty then. And to answer a quick question in the chat, no, OL is not my Gildan 14. It is Elysium. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will all do our goodbyes and move on. What are you guys playing today? If you're streaming.
I'm going to be doing something interesting. I'm setting up for Christmas.
Oh, God.
I might or may not have here. Give me a second here. Oh, Well, that was almost everything. That was almost everything. I might have a tree.
Oh God.
And
That's
I
a
might
metal tree.
have some lights.
Oh no. Mel
And
and I were gonna stream that, but I just wasn't in the mood to stream.
And I have some ornaments.
Are those
and
anal beads?
I have some duckies, and I'm
duckies?
probably gonna make it, or I'm gonna make it. So then, if anyone, I'm gonna basically be making representing all my subs and whatnot, and anyone that supports the channel. I'm throwing it up on the tree because I want to see a nice visual way of doing it, and because it's a green tree, I went out and got some blue fabric as well too. So I'm gonna be doing blue screen now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well thought out. So that's
That's
your
what I'm
stream
gonna be
for
doing.
today. What about you, Slack?
I'm probably going to go ahead and wrap up and come back tomorrow, actually.
Okay.
I don't want to jump into the game for like 2 hours.
I get it. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I will be continuing my quest for probably 100%ing Final Fantasy 15 starting tomorrow.
You have fun with that because that's a long journey.
Yeah, yeah. At the very least, I'm going to platinum the game.
Platinum
and
is a
then
very short journey.
yeah, platinum is like finish leveling up your skills and then you're done.
Honestly, you could if you can beat the story in 18 hours, you probably platinum in 25.
Really?
Yeah. And then spend another 75 hours doing everything else. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish it because what else goes into the 100%? The fishing logs, the cooking.
The fishing log, the recipes, all 8 of the sealed dungeons, collecting all of the unique weapons. You also have the Pitios Ruins dungeon and collecting all of the items in the Pitios Ruins, which is a fucking awful experience. Collecting them all is awful. Completing the dungeon is fun. Collecting all the items.
Anything super missable in the game except for those final chapters?
No, just some
item.
Grolian medals and nothing important.
Trash.
Yeah.
What are the Oracle Ascension coins for?
There's an NPC you can buy items from. I believe it's on Alticia. Like you can buy a ribbon for 40 of them, for example. Also, there's the Monster Arena, collecting all the rewards of the Monster Arena, which will probably take you about 6 hours alone. Depends on how much gil you bring. If you bring like 1,000,000 gil, it goes a lot faster. But no matter what, you can only gamble 9,999 medals at a given time. And if you ever lose, if you ever lose the match, you're going to lose those medals. If you win, then it gets multiplied. But the Monster Arena. Also, you have all the Justice Monsters machines. That's another thing. You have the full AP grid, which I'm waiting for New Game Plus to do, because if New Game Plus sets me back to level 1, but I get to keep the entire Ascension that I did from the previous game, the amount of AP to gain from doing the game over again is way more. Like I can put up with that more than I can put up with Warp Strike, Warp Strike, Warp Strike, Warp Strike, Warp Strike, Warp. I will kill myself if I have to do that to finish the whole grid. So yeah, you've got some work.
Yeah, there's some stuff to be done for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, we're all going to do our sign-offs. Morag, why don't you tell them where they can find you at?
You can find me at twitch.tv/Tomorag. I love your faces. This was really fun. I will be my bitter, cynical self, but I love you. I will hug you. And if you saw any of my rants, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
No, they were pretty bad.
I know they were bad, but
they were pretty bad. They were pretty soapboxy. I was really good today.
Yeah, my chat was like, Morag is just, he's being a bitch today.
That's
what my chat's been saying.
I've been watching.
I know.
I see you.
He sees you. Slack, what about you, my man?
I'm at slackaholicus.tv, twitch.tv/slackaholicus, twitter.com/slackaholicus. I'm going to keep on playing RPGs. I'm doing a bid war to close out the year. In 2017, I'm going to be learning a speed run for one of 4 games. All subs, resubs, bits, tips, and everything is able to go towards whatever one of those games you want to see me learn. Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy Tactics, Bravely Second, and Valkyrie Profile are the 4 options. And
so which game has Martin picked?
He's picking 3 of them.
Where's Crimson Echoes? Why is it not on there?
I literally went into your stream when it started 2 days ago, and I was like, I saw 3 from Martin. 100. I was like, all right. I know
Martin's going to have fun with this. The only one he doesn't like the speed run of is Bravely Second. So he was like, I don't care about that.
I don't blame him.
I'm going to have a 3-way tie for the rest, though.
I don't blame him.
Like, oh, Jesus Christ.
And I am the final host, Michael Mr. Happy Pomeromo, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Mr. Happy1227. And I'll be the one to do it because I was disappointed neither of you did it. What can I say? You guys are the best.
I said I love you.
In Japanese, he actually says that he loves them, apparently. In that campfire scene, he goes, "I love you guys." In the American one, I guess because of the way people were, talking about the game.
No one ended up doing the I have made a discovery either. It's a new recipe.
It's a new recipe.
I can taste that for you.
I can taste
every time.
Oh, hi there, opening. Oh, hi, Mark. I always made room references every time he said it. He was like, hi there, opening. I was like, oh, hi, Mark.
The best part of that movie is the fact that he uses a gun barrel at the end, too. So.
I know. That's the irony. There you go.
Oh, I gotta know, people in chats, have you seen where the cactors are in the movie yet? There's cactors in the movie. And it's hilarious where they are.
In what movie?
Kingslave.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. The people of Insomnia eat roasted cactors.
Yep. Yes, they do.
It's hilarious.
Yes, they do. It sounds delicious. Roasted cactus sounds so good. I would eat roasted cactus.
As long as you get the needles out, sure.
I mean, that's like the same deal with pufferfish. I mean, you live, you die. I mean, at least you got food.
Delish.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you for joining us for the final CountUp cast, but I'm sure we'll be back with some other project in the future. Thank you, and until next time, take care.
I'm Ian. Oh, hey, Happy.
Yeah?
One last time.
One more, music's got me feeling so free. Okay.
Gotta celebrate.
Celebrate and dance so free. One more time. There you go. And now